be under 500 because they play another team who's also 500 tonight in the Phoenix Suns. But, I'm not really sure what the future holds for this season, for this team. But I know that watching them over the last couple of weeks, it's been difficult to figure out what pieces you want and what pieces you don't.
There is something, you talked about the kids and how well they played last night. I mentioned this to you last time. Last time I was a bit inquisitive and like, could this be a thing? And now I'm sold on it. The last time, Jonathan Kuminga's previous career high was 33 points. And that came in a game against the Houston Rockets in which they ended a 5-game losing streak. Guess who didn't play in that game against the Houston Rockets?
30.
It was Draymond Green and it was Steph Curry. And I said to you in the audience that I think Jonathan Kuminga is a different basketball player when those two aren't on the floor. Now, obviously, he's getting the majority of the looks. The offense is going through him. He's playing upwards to 35 to 38 minutes a contest. So naturally, his rebounding and his numbers are going to be up. But there is a swagger. There's a confidence in his game when he's not deferential to Steph Curry and Draymond Green. And I think collectively as a group, that's true. That I think that Lindy Waters lets it fly. Suddenly you see Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis, by the way. We got to put a spotlight on him because he has pivoted and he's becoming the Trace Jackson Davis of a year ago. And he's getting nasty. He looks very good over the last 10 days. But I think there's a freedom when those two are out of the game. Now, I'm not saying that Steph Curry and Draymond Green should come off the bench, but there is something there. And my eyes don't deceive me that Jonathan Kuminga feels a sense of release. That clearly you can see the confidence. He is not, body language alone, he is not the same basketball player. And he's much better when Steph Curry and Draymond Green are not on the floor with him. And that's true, I think, for all of those players who, and you can't help it, when you join the Warriors, you know that it's all about Steph and Draymond. And if you're going to take a shot, you and Steph and Dre are on the floor, you better be damn well sure that it's a good shot, because otherwise you should have given it up to Dre and or Steph. I think that's sort of the logic with these guys. And when they're out, it's almost like, you go to chemistry when I was at SI and Mr. Lawrence wasn't there and you get the substitute. It's like, there's a freedom, man. I'm going to walk around this class and strut my stuff and do my thing instead of being in that shell that I typically am when I don't know the first thing about biology/chemistry.
Well, but your teacher didn't need you to be great at bio. The Warriors needed Jonathan Kuminga in that game last night, just like they needed him against Houston. And I guess it begs the question, what do you do about him? Because on one hand, I can totally see a lot of people looking at that game and saying, all right, that's a perfect showcase game. That's a perfect trade bait game. That's a perfect game where the Warriors can feature their best trade chip. And he had an awesome game, and they lost. But someone out there is going to see this kid and say, I want a piece of that. I could also see some people saying, you're going to trade that? You're going to trade a guy that can score 34 points? And look, I mean, I know that Kuminga, they did not win the game. Had a costly turnover. I think it was with a minute and 20-ish seconds left. He wasn't perfect down the stretch, but he went 11 of 14 at the free throw line. Only took 3 threes last night.
10 rebounds. 10
rebounds, but he was cutting. I mean, he was playing off the ball. I thought Kuminga played a great game last night. Is that really what you want to give up on? And so I think that's where that's the decision that the Warriors are stuck on. And that's going to dictate where this season goes, good or bad. But he's kind of he's the pendulum player. And he's going to swing either this season towards himself and Curry, or maybe they can use him to go get somebody else. But I just wonder how people kind of view the 37-minute, 34-point performance by Kuminga last night, because, I mean, if that's someone that he needs Curry to be off the floor to do that, that's also another thing you got to weigh in the equation. But, I think they have to figure out, at least for the immediate, just how they can try and get that player when Curry's not on the floor, because otherwise I'm not really sure how the Warriors are going to succeed.
If you put the trade talk aside for a moment and just think about the Warriors as it relates to Jonathan Kuminga, my takeaway from that game is, how do you get that Jonathan Kuminga when Steph and Draymond are on the floor? It's clearly a thing. I know I got, maybe talked out of it last time. I'm not going to today. When Steph and Draymond aren't there, he's a different basketball player, and I can see it. I can see the swagger. How do you get that guy to perform like that when Steph and Draymond are back and healthy? Because that guy can be a number two, and he can answer all of those questions that we ask on a daily basis. I mean, heck, it got so bad they went out and they got Schroeder. Schroeder, by the way.
Yep.
Tick, 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 tick. It's time, my man. It's been, 5 games? I don't know. How long is the grace period before we see some dividends on our investment?
Well, the investment was basically nothing, but that's also what you can get is nothing back. I mean, they didn't have to give up anything besides a couple second-round picks. Yeah. But that last night is where the Schroeder trade is like, what are we doing? Because it isn't just Kuminga. I mean, they were playing that kind of game without Schroeder. That's a game where you're supposed to, and I think one of the reasons why your boy Trace Jackson-Davis has been playing better is because of Schroeder. I think he plays better alongside a traditional just kind of pick-and-roll player. But at the same time, I think Schroeder's shooting like 20% from three since he's got here. And I know that he's not a three-point marksman by any means, but we were sold a bill of goods that right now he's not delivering. And so I think last night is a perfect example of what the Warriors are going to have to figure out, because number one, Curry and Draymond, even when they are playing, are sometimes less diminished versions of themselves, but also they're going to have to miss more games. I think one of the strategies that Kerr's trying to figure out is, well, okay, we are load managing, and we're just going to do it because we need Curry on the floor as much as possible when he can play, and that means he might have to basically miss a game or two. Kuminga, you're the one tonight. Who else? Who was the number two on the floor last night? Kuminga came off the bench. I know he played the most minutes, but he wasn't even in the starting lineup. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they can get that player, because it's like him and Steph are taking different turns of being on and off. Monday, Kuminga was really good against Indiana. Curry was not. Christmas, I didn't think Kuminga was very good. Curry was very good. Last night, Curry obviously didn't play, but tonight against Phoenix, I mean, how? That's what they need to solve in order to try and win some basketball games. And Phoenix, I know they got KD and Book and Beal and all the boys, but they are a winnable opponent, and the Warriors need wins in a bad way.
I think it's really, really, it's fascinating how good of a basketball player he is when when Steph Curry and Draymond Green are not on the floor. And when they're healthy, how do you get this version of JK? Because again, that solves everything. That guy, and he clearly has it, has the ability to be the number two, and at nights be a number one. But again, it's in his head, man. And he's a sensitive man. He's a sensitive basketball player, and he's very aware of his minutes. He's very aware of when he doesn't start or does start. And I'll defer to Steve Kerr, I guess, on this one, but there's something there. There's something there when those two guys aren't on the floor. And there's that sort of energy. I recognize that energy from the Warriors last night that I haven't seen since the 12-3 start. And is it just coincidental that it happens when Steph and Draymond aren't on the floor? I think there's a conundrum there. It's like, how do you capture what it is that team did, albeit they lost by 10, but to be competitive against what is, again, a good basketball team, and that being the Los Angeles Clippers. But how do you capture that energy that they had last night going forward and then bring Steph and Draymond back into the fold? That to me is sort of my big takeaway from last night.
Well, I know they've lost both games since Curry reportedly called a team meeting or a players only meeting. But I do think that There is a different level of fight to the basketball team that we hadn't seen prior to. The issue is that it hasn't turned into wins just yet. And it could tonight. Again, the Warriors are going to play the Phoenix Suns. That'll be right here on 95.7 The Game. And, looking at a 5:30 tip, 4:30 Warriors live. I believe Mark Graney's going to be at Chase Center tonight. The level of fight is different. The level of energy is different. And I think you saw that from Kuminga last. You saw that from all the young players last night. I didn't think the young players were the problems against the Clippers. It was
5 is terrible.
It was Schroeder. It was Buddy Hield. It was Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
And that one actually did cut me a little bit because I think that Wiggins has been arguably the most consistent player on the Warriors in terms of games played, two-way impact. And, he was still defending last night, but that's also a game where Kuminga is looking for someone else to help him out offensively. And it felt like their second best offensive player it might have been Trace Jackson Davis. So even on a night where it's all free reign, anybody can go get it, Jonathan Kuminga had nobody to help him offensively.
Yeah, and usually it's Steph who doesn't have anybody to help him offensively. So it's a good sign, and I agree with someone on the text line here. The 510, it's called consistent minutes for Kuminga. Look, I go back and forth with callers last night and throughout the week about Jonathan Kuminga, and I do think there are holes in his game, and I agree with Steve Kerr that there are some things that he needs to work on, which is why I don't think that he has that level of confidence in playing Jonathan Kuminga, but he's got to. And the idea of continuing to mess with this guy's head, start him, have him come off the bench, not have consistent minutes, just play the guy. Play the guy. Why? Because you need to. You don't have any other options. He has the potential to do what it is that he did last night on a nightly basis. And for a team that's so anemic offensively, he can't afford to play around with that. Commit to him. Give him the 30 minutes a night. Because I think you're going to get more often than not what it is that you saw last night. If he knows that there's a level of commitment, maybe that whole, that mental roadblock in his head of whatever that's going on with him, with Steph and Draymond being on the floor, maybe that's removed if he knows that he has the coach's confidence that he's going to play regardless of early mistakes, regardless of early turnovers, that there's a commitment to him that he's going to get 30 to 35 minutes every single night. And maybe you're going to see more of what it is you saw last night.
Well, let's just take a look at his last month. He's played 13 games, 7 starts. He's averaged 29.6 minutes per game. Kuminga's averaging 19.5 on about 45% shooting. I think the thing that I get frustrated with is the starting lineup issue, because I agree with you. I think he's got to play. I think he needs consistent run. But when will Steve Kerr either believe that what Kuminga can bring to the starting lineup is A, more important than Draymond Green, or B, figure out a way to play him with Draymond Green? And that appears to be somewhat of a hang-up, because whether you believe he's, I don't know, a 3, a 4, whatever the position is, clearly Kerr is reluctant to start him when TJD and Draymond are on the front line. And so the question becomes to me, well, do you start Kuminga or do you start Draymond Green? And I think when Draymond and Curry are both healthy, that's in addition to how he is able to play alongside Steph, that's the question to me that they're going to have to answer. And I'm honestly more of the camp, Dan, that right now nothing is working as far as winning basketball games. But I think they have a chance to either improve offensively and try and figure this thing out more so with Kuminga than Draymond. And damn it, I think that Kuminga should start over Draymond.
But why does he have to start? If that's the hang-up, he played more minutes than anybody last night. He came into the game and played 18 minutes in the first half and didn't leave, and he did the exact same thing in the second half. I don't care whether he starts or not. If that's the hang-up, let him come off the bench and then pull Trace Jackson Davis and keep Draymond, or pull Draymond and then bring him in, or pull Wiggins. He doesn't have to start. He didn't start last night, and he played nearly 40 minutes. And I think if you're going to get that performance, there just has to be a commitment to this guy. And if it makes more sense to start Draymond, go ahead, do that. But give this guy burn where it's upwards to 35 minutes and that he knows every single night.
But those minutes have to come from somewhere. So whether we're talking about starting, closing, somewhere in the middle, like he played 37 minutes because there wasn't an extra four. Like Kyle Anderson started, but he played 15 minutes. So those minutes have to come from somewhere when Draymond Green is back and healthy.
Well, that's Steve Kerr's juggling act.
But that's what I'm saying.
Well, I get it. But if Jonathan Kuminga is going to be that guy, well, then it's going to come out of the pocket of both Wiggins and Draymond Green and Trace Jackson Davis or anybody else on that front line. Is that logical? I mean, if he's going to give you that sort of production, then it's going to come at the expense of Draymond not playing as many minutes or Andrew Wiggins not playing as many minutes simply because Jonathan Kuminga right now is a better option.
Well, he was last night, but that's also the part that's troubling is they haven't been able to get them going when they're together on the floor. Like I mentioned, Kuminga, Minnesota, Memphis did not play well. On Monday against Indiana, when he went back to the bench, like he responded to Kerr's message over the weekend. He played really well. That's a night where Curry didn't play well. So he does need more minutes. He does need consistent run, but you're going to have to live with some of those 2 for 11s. You're going to have to live with some 1 for 9s. And I think that's the part that Kerr's a little more reluctant about. Is how can we, like when JK doesn't have it going, last night he was sensational, but when he doesn't have it going, how are you going to be able to combat that? I mean, for example, against the first half against the Lakers, he was like a minus 22 in 10 minutes.
It's terrible.
So when you play consistently, those nights are going to happen. And because the Warriors have been reeling and looking for any semblance of consistency, it's like, I think that's the reason why he's been getting jerked around.
You know, the 4-1-5 makes a good point. And I really think that there's something to this. And I mentioned the last time he had 33 points in that big win against Houston. And it was his career high at the time. And Steph and Draymond didn't play. Now his new career high is 34, and guess what? Steph and Draymond didn't play. And the 4-1-5 is talking about when Curry's on the floor, that the offense goes through Steph. There's something to that. When Steph is on the floor, he handles the rock. He's your first option. He's looking for his step back. It's about Steph. And so for a young player like Jonathan Kuminga, who is so aware of that, and he has to be deferential. He has to make sure that he can't just try and take a guy ISO because he's feeling it. He's got to make sure that Steph gets a touch, or at least he's aware that Steph's on the floor. And I think that screws up the entire chemistry of this basketball team. There's something to the imbalance of this team, and I'm convinced now after what it is that I saw last night, when Steph Curry's on the floor. And I think it really has an effect on players like that of Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know the answer to that because Steph Curry is still Steph Curry, and the offense needs to go through him, and he can still do what it is that he did against the Los Angeles Lakers. But then how do you unshackle Jonathan Kuminga so you get that version of what it is that he did last night and what it is that he did against the Houston Rockets?
How about I tell you on the other side? 888-957-9570. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone in on Warriors this week. And we're going to be talking about this for quite some time. And maybe not just tonight, maybe not just after the game against the Phoenix Suns, but this week, how do the Warriors try and solve where they're at? And is Jonathan Kuminga the key? Are the younger guys the key for the Warriors? I feel like we go back and forth on this, but last night Curry and Draymond didn't play. They lost. Kuminga was awesome. I thought Podziemski played better than he certainly has recently. And the problem was some of the veterans. How can they get more from their younger players when their best players do return? 888-957-9570. We're back after this.
Moody working on Mo Bamba, right baseline for a driving to the rim. Kuminga! Oh, he hammers it home. 23-21. Warriors back on top by a deuce, and Kuminga with 7 early points in 7 minutes.
Kevin Dana.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Yeah, the incomparable Kevin Dana was filling in last night for Tim Roy. Tim, you slid over to television.
Yeah, I know you like. I'll leave you out of these conversations, but
well, you can.
I
you don't
just
have
want to tell you that last night's broadcast was so refreshing. Listening to Tim Roy, and I'll just leave it at that. It's like driving down the highway and rolling down your window and getting that fresh breath of air. The action sort of spoke for itself. It wasn't incessant babbling, and it was good pacing. It was enjoyable to watch.
You better be careful.
And
Enjoy
Tim
to watch,
Roy,
enjoy to listen to.
He's a radio guy, but on television it was very, very pleasant. But I'm not going to mention any names. Of course, well, I will mention one name. What is it? Kalena Itakatumachi, whatever the last name was Kalena Itakatumachi.
Simmer.
Did his thing, but Tim Roy was Tim Roy, and it was so pleasant. And I'll just leave it at that I finally enjoyed watching a game. But let's continue.
Well, Tim Roy will be back at it tonight. I believe he'll be doing radio with Tom Tolbert, of course, right here on 95.7 The Game. 5:30 tip between the Warriors and the Suns. Tail end of a back-to-back. And two teams that are now at 500, 15-15. The Warriors officially a 2-13 stretch over the last 15 games. But taking last night, kind of talking about the conversation and the question that Dan brought up, just how do the Warriors figure out their biggest question right now, which is how they get that version of Kuminga last night with Steph Curry. And I think also Draymond Green needs to be in the equation too. This is from the 415 of the Comcast business text line. The younger players don't fit Kerr's motion system. It's obvious. They prefer playing with a more traditional point guard and screen and roll. That's Greg from San Francisco. I don't know about that. I mean, I think when Kuminga, one of the reasons he was able to get to 34 is I thought he moved pretty well off the ball last night. And he was cutting, he was getting to the rim, he was diving, he was decisive. He was all of the things that feels like are second guessed when Curry and Draymond are out there.
Is it coincidental that it happens when Steph's not
I don't
there?
think so.
I agree.
I don't think so.
The body language is entirely different.
He's the one. Like, that's what Jonathan Kuminga, the number one player on a team, could look like. We have gotten previews of it, and against the Houston Rockets, they were able to win. Last night, they lost to the Clippers, but I think that's a glimpse of the potential that you can clearly see in this 22-year-old. Like, he's now back over 16 points per game for the season. I think if he continues to get the 35 or, however many minutes you want him to get, north of 30, certainly, he can do that. And I don't know if the question is how deferential he needs to be, but to me, I just wonder why there is so much hesitance and kind of, just reluctance to play with that freedom when Curry's out there. It's like he's got one eye on the rim and one eye on 30.
And Draymond, I think. I think Draymond's a very intimidating basketball player, obviously, but not only for opposing teams, but for players on his team. I think that out of your periphery, you got to make sure that you made the right decision and on the floor in terms of passing or a defensive assignment or a shot. You need the approval of Draymond Green. He's sort of a player coach. After watching last night, Ev, I think that if I was one of the minions, or if I was in the camp of Jonathan Kuminga and I worked for him, I would say, JK, let's get the hell up and out of here. Let's go, man. Because now I'm convinced that you're right. If he's in Charlotte, if he was in Detroit, or if he was in Washington, if he was in one of those rebuilds in Detroit, this dude might be a star, man. This guy, when we talk about that draft class and you have all these good players, and Kuminga's sort of this, there's an asterisk next to his name because he hasn't got the contract extension. I think if he has the potential to do that without Steph and Draymond, that just tells me that this guy could get unlocked somewhere else. We always talk about a fresh start. I think if he got a fresh start and just has put to work what it is that he's learned from Steve Kerr and being on a championship team like that of the Warriors, and then all that raw ability, I mean, that might be sort of an omen of what Jonathan Kuminga could do for another basketball team, not named the Golden State Warriors.
But I'm going to be honest, that's why I don't want to let him go. You know,
I don't think it's going to work here. I really do. I've arrived at that. I don't know. Unless he can do that with Steph. And at this juncture, I don't see that happening.
Is it because of Kuminga or because of Curry or because of Kerr or just the situation? You just don't think that Kuminga is ever going to be able to play like he did last night if Curry's on the floor?
Yeah, I think that there's something mentally that takes place when Steph Curry's on the floor.
Is it mental or physical?
No, it's mental. And there's nothing, I don't think, obviously there's nothing personal with Steph. And the same thing with Draymond. That at this point, that he does not feel that sort of liberty to do what it is that he did last night. You can just see it, man. He's the dude. And he walks around like he's the man. And it's almost like, oh, dad's home. You know, you hear that, you hear the garage door opening, and like suddenly you're like, oh, I got to mind my P's and Q's. Last night, he's the big man on campus. Unless there's some way that he can learn to be that guy when those two dudes return, I don't see it. The fact that there's been 2 games where he has reached his career high at 34 points and 33 points respectively, and both games were this year, and both games were when both Draymond Green and Steph Curry were not available, is not coincidence to me.
Well, I don't think it's coincidental, but I think it's because of the clarity of his role. That's just what I think it is, because it isn't just Kuminga going from a number 1 to a number 2. It feels like when Curry's in, and when Draymond's in to some extent, Kuminga goes from being a number 1 to like a number 3 or number 4. You know, because Wiggins knows how to play right now better alongside Steph from experience, and someone even like Dennis Schroeder, maybe from the way how many years he's got in the league, understands how to play alongside. Jonathan Kuminga is still figuring that out. And it sucks that the Warriors are losing games. But I do think that's something that the Warriors can try to figure out. And I think they have to right now, unless they're going to trade this kid, which very may well happen in a couple months. I just don't know if it happens right now. Are you of the mind that the Warriors have to make a trade in the immediate?
No. One other example that I wanted to cite.
I need to see if this thing can work for a little bit longer before I decide to do that.
Well, you have another month and a half.
Yeah, but I'm saying, well, if you lose tonight, you're below 500. Like, I do think that there is some pressure put on the front office by just how many losses they've sustained in a very short period of time.
Harrison Barnes, I gave this example the last time this happened. And remember, Harrison Barnes was in his own head, and he was, what would you call Harrison Barnes when he was with the Warriors? The third option, maybe? Fourth option? Third option?
Yeah, depending on the night, but third or fourth.
But there were those nights where you're like, oh, come on, man. You can be that guy. You saw the raw talent out of the kid who was a high draft pick out of North Carolina. And you're like, where is that? And he remember in the playoffs against San Antonio way back in the day, and you could just see he was in his own head. He couldn't let it go. There was something going on. And he, too, was deferential to a certain point. Now, I'm not saying it's the same player, but there's some connective tissue here. And then Harrison Barnes goes to Dallas pre-Luka, and he's the guy. He's the number 1. And he blossoms into a guy that gets paid and is still in this league and was the guy for years in Sacramento. But he got out from underneath what was the Steph Curry, the Splash Brothers, the you name it, that he sort of played underneath. And there was a sense of freedom, I think, to Harrison Barnes when he went somewhere else. So there is something, too, I think, playing with the Golden State Warriors when you have first ballot Hall of Famers like that of Steph and Draymond.
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be a difference in the hierarchy. But again, if what I saw last night, like what is best for Kuminga can it be the best for the Warriors? That's what I think they have to lean all the way into finding out over the next couple of weeks, maybe even month, depending on how it goes. And maybe that is building in more rest days for Curry and Draymond. You know, if this is the guy that you want to promote, that you want to elevate, well, then there might be some more load management games coming for Curry.
Yeah, but at some point, they're going to have to play in concert. Like,
well, yeah, they're going to play in concert tonight.
He has to be that guy he was last night with Steph and Draymond on the floor. And not just for a night. He's got to be that guy getting 35 minutes. And we see more of this. If you lean in on him, I think he can be more consistent. If he can't, Ev, then yeah, I think you need to trade him. And he could be that player with another team. Matter of fact, I have no doubt if he's on a team that's not as good as the Warriors, he could be that guy. And if you want to criticize and point a finger at the Warriors, you're like, how did you let him go? The answer is because he couldn't do that here with the Warriors. It's becoming more apparent that he can't be that guy with Steph and Draymond. And so you may as well trade him and get something back from him, because I don't think he can reach that level, which is why I think Jonathan Kuminga, after last night, and his boys should come to the conclusion we need to get up and the hell out of here, man.
Well, I think his boys might already be there. But again, Kuminga himself has never, in my mind, been somewhat of a, labeled a problem child. But his camp certainly has spoke for him. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone with you on Warriors This Week. Let's go to Chuck in San Rafael wants to get into the conversation. Chuck, good morning. What's going on?
Good morning. First, just a real quickie. Can we just, dispense with this plus minus? Lindy Waters, 0 for 6 from the field. He had the best plus minus of the team. Jonathan Kuminga had the worst. Now, so let's not even talk about that. That really bugs the hell out of me. Okay, what do we do with, Kuminga and, the rest of the team? People who want to get rid of Wiggins forget he plays aggressive defense. He's going to give you some points. He's not going to be the leading scorer or the second, but he plays defense, and he's been playing hard this year. And you lose him, and who are you going to get in his place? I don't know. Everybody wants to get rid of Wiggins. I say you got to try to keep him. He does things that don't necessarily appear in the box score. Now, as far as, Schroeder goes, I watched every shot was short. Every shot was hitting the front rim. He's very tight. I think he's just really tense. Plus, of course, we know he's used to the pick and roll. And, Steve Kerr's read and react system has just gone, I think, a little past him right now. As far as Kuminga goes, one of the problems I see is, yes, when the other guy, when Curry's not there, he'll be aggressive. And Kerr has made it a point to say, he said it a couple of nights ago, don't take 12-foot 15 shots with 17 seconds left on the clock. He's kind of told everybody, look, Curry is the man. You don't get him the ball, we're not going to win. And I think that has curtailed Kuminga's aggressiveness. Now, Kuminga also takes a lot of drives to the basket where he's out of control. Last night, by the way, we took 20 more shots, but they blocked 10 of them. So, that's a big thing. You blocked 10 shots. We blocked 1 shot. But I think if you're going to try to keep Kuminga, you're going to have to uncage him and let him play. And do I think he's going to ever develop into somebody special? I don't. I think he's going to be a very athletic guy who give you good points one night, great points another night, and then other nights he does that spin move in the pivot and they swipe it away a lot. He's got to get better control. Look at Powell last night. I mean, 6'4", and he knows his way around the basket. They have to have a second scorer like a Siakam, somebody who could score, or a rim protector. Lauri Markkanen is not the guy. He's averaging less block shots than Harrison Barnes, who averages 0.2, and Markkanen averages 0.1. He's 7 feet. He's blocked 1 shot this year. You want this guy on the team? I mean, he's averaging 18 points. Forget about Markkanen. They need somebody who could score or block shots do something that they are lacking in. And I don't know who that is, but of course I would love Miles Turner. Siakam, I was hoping that Indiana folded, but it's going to be a rocky ride. I don't know, either play Kuminga, 30 minutes a night, let him loose, or trade him. That's my take.
Thanks, Chuck. By the way, I think Wiggins was the worst plus minus last night. Now, Kuminga was not one of those guys, and I don't know if we were getting into that, but I hear him. Like I think people are at a crossroads with this particular player, and a lot of people want him to be set free. A lot of people would love to see that talent flourish here. Other people, Dan, just want to use him as a trade chip to try and upgrade this roster because it's all about the now and it's all about Curry. But when I see games like last night, I'm not going to lie. I am apprehensive about moving a player like that, even if it's for his own good, because there's just so much talent there. And it's undeniable. And it's frustrating that it hasn't come out when the Warriors have all of their best players, him trying to figure out how to play with the rest of their best players. But to me, that's where the next stage of his development is going to come.
I think it's best for both parties at this point. Because, again, I think Steve Kerr always puts an emphasis on, I think his offense is fine. I know people talk about his handle will get better. I think his shooting will get better. I think his decision-making will get better. That'll come with age. He's going to be an offensive threat, and he'll be a beast at times. But it's all the other things that he struggles with. And Coach Kerr talked about this, and he was candid. He's like, guys like this who come out of the G League just don't have the proper schooling. They haven't been taught in college. Like Trace Jackson Davis was a 5-year guy, played under Rod Woodson. And Jonathan Kuminga just simply doesn't have that in his resume. And you can clearly see it. And sometimes it's a detriment, and it's something that stays with a player throughout their entire career, and they just become, good offensive guys. And I think that championship teams are made of two-way players that can score and understand the nuances of defense. And I think that if Steve Kerr, maybe he's already come to the conclusion that Jonathan Kuminga is not there and may not ever get there. And so what it is that he's doing is perfect because, to your point, he's showcasing talent that can get me a boatload in return. And so it's got to be some sort of a definitive where you understand where you're at with Jonathan Kuminga going forward. In other words, this is not a guy that we have long-term plans with because of what it is that he did on Christmas night, because of the fact that, all these things in year 4 are still too prominent in his game, and there's too many holes in his game. And therefore, while the offense is attractive, let's go ahead and trade him while he has this, he has that marketability, and he's a trade chip right now because of what it is that he's doing on the floor.
But then the question to me also becomes who is the player you're getting back, because I think there is a lot of potential that Kuminga can get to. And maybe it's not in Golden State. Maybe it's somewhere like Charlotte or Detroit or Brooklyn is a trade target, or a team that's been rumored to be involved with the Warriors. And a big hang-up in the potential Cam Johnson acquisition was Jonathan Kuminga not being available or not being made available by the Warriors. Do you think that's changed? Because I think they have to figure out whether they're I do think they have to move him, or they have to lean into him. Like there appears to be no way or the other to go, and that's why I think they're stuck, because I do think that he's still too young to really impact winning consistently. But the Warriors are too old. Even some of their superstar players are too old for them to play and also win, apparently, consistently, because they've lost. And I don't know if they're a move away. I mean, we thought that Schroeder was going to come in and change everything.
No one. Well, I didn't.
Well, I didn't either. Yeah. But he's made it worse. Like that's the issue. It's not, he hasn't just come in and not helped and just kind of been a guy. Dennis Schroeder is right now the worst two-man combination alongside Steph Curry. Like they are a minus 48 in 7 games together or 5 games together. And that's a problem. And so when you're making trades, you can also hurt yourself. And I think Joe Schroeder's he's a good player. He's a 12-year vet. He hasn't helped the Warriors. He hasn't helped Curry. And so trading Kuminga just to make a move and to go get a guy doesn't ensure that all your problems are solved. And getting a veteran player that can, quote unquote, that he knows how to play doesn't necessarily work.
I don't want that. The only reason you move him is that you're going to get the pieces you want in return. Otherwise, you're not doing it, which is why it probably hasn't happened to date. I'm sure Dunleavy's been on the horn, and he hasn't found the right trade piece because he's not getting the proper return, I think, for Jonathan Kuminga.
That might have been why they didn't pull the trigger this summer.
But when you say he's too young, are you saying
inexperienced?
Inexperienced. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I mean, just a lack of NBA minutes in NBA games, and it shows sometimes. Even last night, I thought he was awesome. But again, there's still some small things that happen.
Wasn't a clean game. He still made mistakes.
Yeah, and that's going to happen. If you're 22 years old, that's going to happen. And so the Warriors either have to be able to live with those mistakes or figure out how to make up for them. I mean, he was making mistakes early in the season when they were winning 12 out of 15 games. So I think it can be done. And maybe when their schedule softens up a little bit. Again, they've had a December from hell. This will be the second team in the last 12 or 13 that they've played that is not above 500. And that's only because Phoenix is also at 500. So they've played a lot of good teams. And the fact that Kuminga looked as good as he did against a Clippers team that was not whole. They still don't have Kawhi Leonard. Terrence Mann didn't play last night. It really hurt the Warriors the last time they played. But that's a good Clippers team that he just dropped 34 points on.
So the 510 wants to know if we'd be open to a Kuminga for Keegan Murray trade.
That's an interesting one.
Wow, that's not interesting to me. I'd say hell to the no. Are you kidding me?
Really?
Keegan Murray's taking a step back this year.
Well, yeah, but I think that's more about Sacramento than... I mean, he's kind of dealing with some of the same things that Kuminga is, to be honest.
Well, that's what I mean.
I think Keegan Murray would be a great fit in Golden State.
Not what I've seen this year.
Yeah, he has been bad this year. That's a fact. 888-957-9570 is the number. For the 510, we need a big man. This is the one thing that has an immediate effect in a positive way. Well, I mean, Trace Jackson-Davis has looked pretty good. I don't think he's... I don't know. Trace Jackson-Davis is not the problem right now with the Warriors. They got a bunch of them, but he's not towards the top of my list.
Why, somebody going after TJD?
No. I think it's just always the want or the clamoring for a true center or a big man. And I also don't think that would hurt some of the players that we're talking about, specifically Jonathan Kuminga. Let's go to North Carolina, one of my favorite states. Talk to our guy, Tim.
Oh, here comes Raleigh.
Tim, what's going on? How we doing, man?
Here we go.
What's up, Dad? What's up, guys? Hey, I appreciate you guys. I know I talked to Dan last night. I think what we kind of missing, guys, it's a guy that sits high up on the totem pole that is a big fan of this kid that also wants to sell tickets in 3 to 4 years when there is no Curry and Draymond here again. That has a lot to do with this. And that is also seeing these performances. And this guy also sees and knows what this kid does when he's given 30 minutes a game. I would ask you to look at your numbers at this kid. When he gets 30 minutes a game, what his statistics are. And I don't necessarily believe it needs to be a bad team. I mean, I would love to see this kid paired up with Wemby. I would love to see him paired up with Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and Jaime Jaquez. So it is not about him having to go be a one somewhere. It's just him having to be unleashed to be a basketball player. He could be partnered up with somebody else who's just as good. That's what it's not. It's not about he got to go play for a garbage team and get a bunch of shots. The kid just needs to be empowered. I mean, he looks for people out on the court. He moves without the ball. And I think, you guys, I don't know if y'all played sports before, but you probably have. Usually that empowerment kind of has to come from the teammates who you are deferring to. Curry needs to kind of go to him, and Draymond got to go to him and say, look, young fella, go get it. Just go get it. And they got to really believe him, and they got to really do it. Like, they got to feed it to him in crunch time. Let him mess up. That empowerment comes from them. If it comes from them, I think you will see a different level. So, and I mean, I believe, it's got to be a little in-game adjustments where maybe the offense changes a little bit when he's out there, maybe, and when Curry's out there. Like, I think it'll do a lot for his confidence if he knows, damn, Curry's on the court and they still running some action for me. Those type of things go to your mentals and make you start being like, okay, let me stop holding back and just go get it. But, yeah, that's why I say to you guys, I want to see him away from here because I hate the critiques that we give him. It's not that he's 22. It's that he just turned 22. Damn, 2 months ago. So it's a big difference from being 22, about to be 23, and just turning 22. Like, this kid is young. And I want to see him on another team just unleashed and empowered.
Hey, Raleigh, stay right where you are, man. I got a question for you. So I got to disagree with you. You're right. I've played a little sports, so has Eb. And to be honest with you, when a guy feels as though he's the guy, those dudes are usually wired differently, and they don't care about the Steph Currys or the so-called best players on the team. Anthony Edwards didn't give a rip about Karl Anthony Towns when he came into the league.
Little different.
But usually if you're a guy that feels as though you've got the makeup to be a one or a star, you don't necessarily, those guys, you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, Riley.
Right,
those dudes are wired differently.
Real quick, Dan. Let me respond real quick. Number one, hell of a big difference between Cat and Steph Curry. Number two, we saw with Jordan Poole what happened to him when he got too big for his britches. This guy was in a gym when he saw his teammate get knocked in the face, punched out cold. We forget that. He was standing right there and watched it. And what was Jordan Poole? Jordan Poole was a cocky kid who did not think that way. He didn't see Steph. He didn't see Clay. He didn't see Draymond. So think about it, Dan. We talk about the mental makeup of this kid and what he's seen. So maybe he thinks that way, but damn. He saw a teammate get punched out and then get traded. So, Dan, you got to add that into it too, brother.
I hear you.
I got you, Tim. Appreciate the call. We do have to hit a break, Tim, but on the other side, I see Austin, I see Filmo Mike, I see Daniel.
They're coming to the forefront. Here we go,
We got our 2, 3, and 4 hitters coming up on the other side. 888-957-9570 is the number. Again, we're talking about what the Warriors right now, after losing their 12th game in 15, falling to 500, what are they doing? What are they trying to figure out? I think the biggest piece of this roster that needs clarity is Jonathan Kuminga. We'll get into it deeper now on the other side. Second hour coming up on 95.7 The Game.
the hell out of here, Pasta.
Yeah, Steve is shooketh behind the glass.
Our producer left.
Yeah, well, you were the one that ran out. I was like, is this legit? And he goes, oh, no, sorry, it's just a test, just working on a couple things. But it is going to bleed over onto the air.
How much longer are we going to listen to it?
I don't know, man, but I don't really like the tone. Like, you were saying that if this was the voice or the tone of somebody on third down at a football game, I don't know if it would be able to, I don't know if it'd be able to evoke emotion from the rabble-rousers and those that are just, drunk and peeing themselves by the second half.
It evoked emotion for me. I was like, the show's all yours, baby. If this building's on fire, Warriors this week, my ass. I'm out of here. I was halfway down Kearney Street.
It's raining outside. How could there be fire in the building? Steve, lay off the microwave. Okay?
I'm not even gonna lie. The worst possible scenario for anything in life is a fire alarm at school or work. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of panicked for a second there.
I was speaking to my chemistry teacher, Mr. Lawrence.
Easy, Rizzy.
So Mr. Lawrence, my chemistry teacher, he came from. So I went to high school here in San Francisco.
Yeah, we know.
He graduated. Have I not reminded you in the last 10
St.
minutes?
Ignatius, for those just joining us.
So he just graduated Yale, and he was an East Coast, Connecticut, New York guy. And his first time out on the West Coast was to take this job in San Francisco as a chemistry teacher. So sure enough, within the first couple of months, we had an earthquake. And all of us that have grown up in the city, you know exactly what to do. You get under your desk, or you get under a doorway, which is supposed to have the most solid structure. This guy ran outside. He's like, earthquake! Earthquake! He forgot all of us, and he ran outside, and we looked out the window, and we're like, well, dude, what are you doing? That's the last place you want to be during an earthquake. You rookie?
Well, I'm real glad that you guys have so much trust in your Ivy League school graduation, a graduate level professor in high school. Dude, okay, so some high school teachers, I feel like it's almost like trying to find a prospect in the NBA. Some of them I would have thought would never go on to do anything interesting, important, cool. Others, you're like, oh, that teacher's real smart. I love studying, and they get the best out of me. Maybe I want to read a book, which I never did. And those are the ones that get stuck there forever. I have a high school English teacher. I saw a couple of buddies.
Teaching isn't a stepping stone to something else.
Well, it can be, because this guy's now the VP of Uninterrupted.
No.
Jimmy Spencer. Do you know this guy?
Yeah, Jimmy Spencer.
Yeah. He taught English at St. Mary's College High School.
That's right. We've talked about it. He's with LeBron James Production Company.
Yeah, so it can be a stepping stone, apparently.
Oh, so is he no longer
idiots
with LeBron?
like me, huh?
Is he no longer with LeBron?
No, he is. But I'm saying he used to teach English back in the day,
Yeah.
and now he is doing big things. I would have never guessed that someone like Jimmy would go on to do what he's doing.
He's a great guy. Wow,
Because
that's hilarious.
I'm just saying.
Well, I think that a lot of teachers, first of all, shout out all of you teachers. You need to get paid more. But anybody who makes that sort of commitment, you're just, I think the way we view success is very different to a teacher. What it is that you just described, if you can change a kid's life, that to them is success. It's not measured by
Well, it should be.
bank accounts or what we deem as being sort of that sexy position, whether it's in a tech company or making more money than any of us. I think that their definition of success is admirable.
But that's not always just a kid getting good grades or maybe getting into a good college. It could be something deeply more personal than that. And that's in relation to coaching and bringing it back to the Warriors. It's like, the job that Steve Kerr is doing, to me, it's kind of twofold. He's clearly still...
Before we get back to the Warriors, since we're talking about teaching, I just got to give you a quick shout out to Bob Drucker, the legendary basketball coach at SI who passed away, I want to say about a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Just shout out, Drucks. We love you. R.I.P. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. Sorry to hear that.
All good.
No, but I think that he's either been too rigid or too trusting in one of the two sides of the fence that the Warriors have constructed for him, like the roster, because the only players that are really, I guess, impact guys that are in their prime or around would be Wiggins, Schroeder, maybe you throw Looney in there, if you want Gary Payton II. Those aren't your dudes, though. What we're trying to figure out is how the dudes, which would be Curry and Kuminga, really, the two most gifted offensive players that they have. Wiggins can clearly score the basketball, but as you saw last night, when Curry's not on the floor, he's not the number one. It's JK. How can he get his two players that are 22 and 36 years old to play symbiotically? And that's where it's kind of, I don't know, it's not quantifiable in a sense because you can see it sometimes, but they haven't been winning games. And that's what Steve Kerr, to take a page out of your boy's book, that's what he's got to do. He's got to teach. He's got to teach. 888-957-9570 is the number. Let's talk to Austin in San Jose. Wants us to think beyond Steve Kerr. Austin, good morning. What's going on?
Hey, good morning, fellas. Happy holidays. Man, I enjoyed Tim's comments from North Carolina. I think he absolutely nailed it. Well thought comments from him. I like the idea of accommodation that needs to happen from the vets. And I know, Dan, you sort of challenged that assumption, but I do think there's kind of a middle ground between the coach saying, hey, we're going with this guy, and the player saying, yep. I mean, Draymond has signaled that he understands the transition. He understands the next phase. He understands that really the only guy on the roster that has a chance to be the guy going forward is Kuminga. So if anybody's thinking there's anybody else on the roster, please get it out of your, not mine, because once Steph decides to leave and take whoever with him that goes with him, the Warriors are essentially going to be more or less, if you don't want to use the word rebuild, but they're going to be in a reset at the very least. So, and then from a marketing standpoint, I always go back to this. How are they selling tickets, guys? I mean, we keep talking about all these guys that fall on the floor and take charges and all this kind of stuff, but those guys aren't going to sell tickets. I mean, Buddy Hield's not selling any tickets. No one's going to see the Warriors if Steph is now on the court. When Clay was here, at the very least, even a bad Clay could still sell tickets. He had that charisma and mystique. I don't see anybody. So that's the business side I think we have to look at. But I am in favor of, hey, and the fire alarm going off, guys, in your studio is kind of a metaphor for the Warriors. I mean, the fire alarm it's definitely going off. It's really a good transition, Evan, that you made. But the point is that they have to see this as a fire alarm phase. And to me, what do they got to lose now, Dan, as far as just going all in on Kuminga? Even if it fails, I mean, what have they got to lose? Because the other side of the coin is if you decide to keep going with this yo-yo 12-man collegiate roster protocol, which I said from the beginning I didn't buy. Even when they were winning, I didn't believe in it. And sure enough, it's come to fruition. So it's either we continue this nonsense and we go 500 for the rest of the season, or we try something different. At least at the very least, we know what Kuminga is. I mean, let's play this guy to the very end, okay? And as far as the accommodation with Curry, I don't know if that's as big a deal as people are making. I think Kerr is making it a big deal with he can't play Kuminga and Wiggins together. He's got the thing with Curry. I'm not sure I'm buying. I'm seeing it as a coaching thing. And the last thing, guys, what about Kerr? 1 year left on the contract. What about the next coach that comes in? Would that next coaching staff care or want to keep Kuminga, see Kuminga the same way? Because we got to be careful. If we throw out Kuminga and we change coaching staffs over the next 2 years, then what? Something to throw into the equation, guys. I'll keep listening. Thank you.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, look, a lot of well thought out comments. I think that to me, it's, we said it last weekend, but it is coming to kind of put up or shut up time. And I don't know if also the question to me lies as much about whether Curry can play with Kuminga or Kuminga can be at his best with Curry. But also, I do wonder where Draymond Green fits into this equation because, yes, Curry was out the Houston game. Kuminga went crazy. Draymond was also out. And Draymond has, I think because he's been dealing with injury, he's been also at a diminished level of himself. I don't think he really gives you anything offensively. And even his facilitation over the last 15 games, in my eyes, has been subpar or less than what Draymond Green has given you in the past. I also wonder, too, if there's a question about can Kuminga, can he still play with Draymond? Can Draymond still be the best option for Curry? Can he still be the best player alongside Steph? Because I was just looking at two-man combinations over the last 10 games and really over the last 15 when they've lost, 12 of them. And Draymond Green is not one of the guys that has been playing the best alongside Steph. He hasn't maximized Curry the way that he has seemingly for the entirety of their basketball lives together. And I think that to me is just as a concern as the question we're trying to answer about Kuminga, which is, what's Kuminga going to be? How can he be a one? How can he be the best version of himself? Well, if the question is really how Curry can be the best version of himself, well, then I think you also have to point the finger at the guy who's on the floor with him almost all the time, or last night off the floor with him, and that was Draymond Green.
I agree with you. I said this over the offseason, that this team was too old. I'm trying to think of a team that won a championship or that was good, that was maybe the Spurs, that were quote-unquote older, but it just doesn't happen. It's a young man's world, and there's a reason why teams like Boston, Denver before them, are always sort of in their prime, late 20s, early 30s. You don't see this. And I was a big fan of getting rid of Clay and breaking this thing up. Now, Austin brings up a good point that, we could be looking at a rebuild or a reset in a year or two. I think that I've maintained all along that this is what we're witnessing right now.
The transition.
Yeah, we want to call it a transition. Dress it however it is you want, but that's what this is. Because look around, Ev. I mean, and that's why they should have got rid of Draymond at the beginning of the season. And that's why they should just lean in on Jonathan Kuminga, because this is not a team that's going to win a title. So you may as well find out where you're at with this kid, let him develop, because this is a transitional season. Did we really think at the beginning of the year? Because this is really sort of what it boils down to. It's talent. It's roster construction. We can talk about rosters all we want, but what is it that you want to get out of this team? I mean, okay, so maybe you should play slow-mo more, or maybe it's the rotation with Wiggins sitting and you play Draymond or Jonathan Kuminga. It's still a team that's inferior as far as talent is concerned when you think about Oklahoma, when you think about the top-tier teams in this league. And the NBA has never changed in that regard. It's the reason why the Warriors were so good and won 73 games when they had arguably the best starting lineup in the history of the sport, either them or the Chicago Bulls, right?
Yeah.
It's the reason why LeBron, Bosh, and Wade got together, because they realized that the three of us can be a powerhouse. The NBA is never changed its face in terms of how you win. So the idea that we're going to do it a different way and just sort of do it with smoke and mirrors and 12 or 13 guys and try and fool you and do this for 82 games, come on, we knew that this wasn't sustainable, because you just don't have the boys at the end of the day. You don't have the horses, and you can look up and down that roster, and there's only so much you can get out of who it is that Steve Kerr has to turn to on a nightly basis.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. The roster has been exposed, and when you're losing, everything looks bad. But, I mean, you really get to see the pieces that somehow won 12 of 15 games. They're 500 right now, but in this team that cannot sniff a win. But it can happen to one player. Dan, it happened to like 15 of them. I mean, that's the crazy part about this so far. All right, let's go to Philmo Mike. Philmo, good morning, man. What's going on?
What's popping? A lot of things being said, a lot of good. I mean, I think ultimately, though, you guys have been using different words: unleash, empower. Kuminga, man, he got to be empowered. And then let me just say this: I love Steph Curry, but we can't base everything off Steph Curry. He don't make mistakes. You feel me? The veterans be making mistakes in crunch time. So it's all this stuff they be talking Kerr trying to say, or then I think you were trying to allude to, he can't play because these things are happening. Man, Curry be messing up in crunch time, man. You feel me? 16 years in the league, still making boneheaded plays, doing stupid-ass passes. So I don't want to hear nothing about, the veterans and, that's because Curry's not perfect. And this is not the Golden State Currys. It's the Golden State Warriors. So they need to figure it out. You feel me? It can all be so simple. Wu-Tang Clan sample, because it can.
Nice.
let people get they burn. When Buddy Hield is hot, get a ball to Buddy Hield. When Kuminga cooking, it's Kuminga turn. Let Kuminga cook. Curry cannot sustain crazy amounts of just, I'm going to cook the whole game. That's not your game no more, bruh. I'm sorry. I love you to death. You feel me? And then also, Kuminga's 22. Like, we got to give him some runway and some leeway. Like they say, unleash him, empower him, because once you do that, you can uncap something. But when you say, nah, man, you can't do this and you can't do that, well, he not going to do that and he not going to do this. But you say, you know what, man, go out there and play your game, bruh. This is your game tonight. You feel me? This you tonight, Kuminga. We need you to take over in the third or the fourth quarter. And the type of team that they have, they can do it. And we keep talking about, oh, we don't have the talent. Yes, we do. We're not executing in the stretch, and we're not hitting our free throws. It's fundamentals. We're right there. We're in every game. All these crunch time minutes in games, we're not executing. And it's from the top to the bottom, to the coaching staff, to everybody. They're not executing. They're there. They have the talent. You just said we don't. We do have the talent. We beat OKC. We beat these teams. We can do it. They're not executing. They're not doing the fundamentals. So, and then they got to get on the same page. That's all I know. I'm venting because I'm hot. They're right there, but they're not right there. So it's just frustrating.
I got you, Filmo. Just don't turn the fire alarm back on. All right, coming in too hot.
Sounds like Rob Parker. You know who Rob Parker is from the Odd Couple podcast on Fox.
Oh yeah,
kind of sounds like Rob Parker a little bit.
Well, a little more emotion. I mean, Rob is typically pretty steady. Filmo is also a pretty level-headed guy too. So met him for the first time in the studio. He's a cool dude.
Oh really?
But he's hot. He was hot today.
What do you mean you met him in the studio?
Yeah, so Filmo came in, I believe, because he was a part of the Doobie Awards, which was the morning roast, sports Emmys, basically the 95.7 Emmys, whatever. And Filmo was a part of it. He did all the introductions. I heard his voiceover. This was, what, a week and a half ago?
Here?
No. It was at Laughing Monk Brewing down in Sunnyvale, who, by the way, I met a guy last night that I went to high school with, Scott Keating, who works for Laughing Monk. I think he's one of their property managers or something. Anyways, we're talking about it, and we got to do some more work with these guys because that was an awesome event that Filmo was involved in. But also, just for the station, it's so much fun when we can get out and interact with some of the callers, some of the listeners, like person to person, face to face, because I think a lot of people, and I appreciate it, they listen to us all the time, but it's a lot more fun when you get that human interaction. I don't know if you like to do on remotes or, be a man of the people, Dan Devone.
No, I don't leave the studio.
Well, you don't leave.
Unless it's on fire.
Just to chime in here, I actually met Filmo Mike at the Doobie Awards on the 20th. And my first day working here, my first day producing, I screened a call from Filmo Mike. And first day, I don't know any of their, they all have these kind of Oreo cookie in Oakland and Manny on the Dunbar, and they have their personas, and I didn't know any of this. And I was like, Filmo Mike. I thought he was Mike and Fillmore, or Mike in the Fillmore or something. And I was like, Filmo who? Filmo who? And he was like, Filmo Mike. And he must have said it 3 times. So when I met him at the Doobie Awards, I introduced myself and I'm like, hi, I'm one of the new producers. And he remembered that screening. So awesome. Really good guy and really helped out with the Doobie Awards.
Well, you guys know, you do know that's how Guru got his nickname, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Pete Franklin.
Yeah, he used to flush people. And so one time Guru called in with a take, and he said, who's this Guru? Get him off. And he flushed him. And then he always called back in as Guru from Union City. I can honestly say I never called into Sports Talk Radio.
I never have either, honestly. I've done radio hits, and I've called in when people have asked me to.
Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
But I just honestly, there is a lot of courage when you call in that's demanded of you to call into a radio station. Sometimes it's like, you're waiting in line, you're waiting to get your takes off. And sometimes I always try and give people the benefit of the doubt when they're beginning their thoughts. It's like the people that come on and just spit, it's incredible because I think it's hard, man.
No, it is. Sort of like being a good analyst. You got to get in and get out and do it in a limited amount of time. So, I fly a lot. So I watch a lot of podcasts. And I have a couple of go-tos. I'm a big Dan Patrick guy. Dan Patrick, by the way, is the king of the mountain. Dan Patrick is the most highly rated show in sports talk radio.
You know, I went on Dan Patrick, right?
I was like, I'm watching Dan Patrick, and he's like, let's get out to San Francisco and join Evan Giddings. I'm like, holy Christmas, what do we have here?
That's probably the highlight of my career thus far. That was really cool. Although I was bleeping bricks. It was like 7 in the morning.
Yeah, it's early. They go on at 6 East Coast time, and they don't care. Like, you get up, like all their coasts in the way. Steve Young is on there on occasion. You can tell these guys just got the crust balls in their eyes, and people have just woken up. But that's the show by which all others are measured by. Rich Eisen, you name it. Yeah. Colin Coward. It starts with Dan Patrick. They were the originators of sort of converting a sports talk radio show into a television program.
Yeah, Dan and the Danettes, all of them. Actually, that was probably the coolest part is I got to talk to Paulie like on Zoom.
Yeah, Paulie he coordinates the guests. Right?
Yeah, he's hilarious. But the other part of it too was, dude, I think I went on like after Charles Barkley. I had to follow Charles Barkley, and I was trying to think if there was a joke I could make, but no one knew who the hell I was. It was just like, who's this random guy with a Hawaiian T-shirt on here to talk about the Oakland A's? They're not like Dan was amazing, by the way. He's a great interviewer. But I do love that show. I do love that show.
So Dan is a guy, this is where I get it from, is that he will tell you he's in that school of less is more.
Yes.
And if you ever listen to him interview somebody, he'll always tell you it's not about my question. It's not about me. It's about the response. So you always want to be, you can always tell somebody who wants to make it about themselves, and they begin to make this long sort of elongated question. Just, be very to the point, curt.
Well, I think one of the reasons he's also a great interviewer is he's respectfully challenging. Because I think an important part of talking to a big name guest is like you don't want to just throw him softballs. You do have to get into the meat and potatoes. And I think, and not just from my experience with him, but just listening to him over the years, he is very disarming. But you can tell that what he's trying to get to, it's not from a place of I'm trying to air you out or get a quote or go viral on social media. It's a legitimate conversation, but he'll challenge you on your point of view. And so, typically a lot of these hosts will have things written for them, questions, but you can tell that he'll go off the cuff if he really wants to dig into something. And that's an important part of interviewing that I personally need to work on, but I think Dan Patrick is A+ at.
He's the best.
All right, let's go to Indiana and talk to Daniel. Wants to get into Jonathan Kuminga. Has been hanging on patiently. Daniel, what's going on? You're on Warriors This Week. Good morning.
Hey, guys. Good morning. I heard you guys talking about Dan Patrick and all that, and I'm telling you, I would love to be, a radio talk show host like you guys. I think it's so much fun, and I'm passionate about the Warriors. I'm not plugging myself. I'm just saying I'm in Indiana here, but anyway.
Well, thank you, Daniel.
Kuminga, yeah, I mean, you guys do a great job and deserve a lot more credit than you get for sure. So
right on.
Definitely enjoy listening. So
where in Indiana are you?
I'm actually New Albany, Indiana, right across the bridge from Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So,
hey, stay hot.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, Jonathan Kuminga, as far as he goes, like I keep hearing, people that I was listening earlier, and you guys were talking about his mistakes and the things. And man, I'm telling you, what really bothers me is that, if he were a 22-year-old rookie performing the way that he's performing right now, we would be like all over his greatness. You know what I'm saying? And how good he is coming out. And you look at guys that are 36 years old, like, Dre and Curry, and they're making those same mistakes at a higher clip. I mean, Draymond has 4 turnovers a game, to Kuminga's 1.6, and we want to talk about the boneheaded throwing it out of bounds or this or that. I think where we are as a team, we need to embrace building around Kuminga and then incorporating Curry into that. The last conversation you guys and I had, I talked about Steph Curry being a number 2 as opposed to a number 1. We keep talking about how we want to make somebody, who's his number two, and he's at a stage in his career where he's producing 22 points a game, which is good, but there are days that he's not even producing that. So it's like we've got to go with the athleticism, the guys that can get out and get going, and I think that's what we saw last night with the young guys. Tur wants to talk about, making Kuminga come off the bench because he likes those bench minutes and all that. And I'm like, man, we don't even have our starter minutes down. We don't even have the guys, who are starting performing at a high clip. Like, start your studs. Anybody who's ever played fantasy football or fantasy basketball or anything like that, you start your studs. You put your best guys in. You put the guys that have the best opportunity to create and to score and to do those things. And Kuminga is that.
Yeah.
I mean, last year we were talking about trading for Pascal, Siakam. And honestly, he's produced. I said at that point in time, if you extrapolate his minutes over, or his statistics over 36 minutes, he produces it at a slightly lower clip than Pascal Siakam.
I got you, Daniel. Appreciate the call, man. Sorry, we do have to hit a break here, but some interesting thoughts. And it leads me to a place where I want to get to on the other side. My biggest issue right now with this team, with the Warriors, and my biggest concern, quite frankly. We'll get into that on the other side. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, Warriors This Week, 95.7 The Game.
Jackson Davis the steal, and he'll power it home. The steal and slam for TJD. And we're tied up at 34.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Give him some, Kevin Dana.
That is Kevin Dana. Was on the call last night for the Warriors' 102-92 loss to the Clippers. That's something. Look, KD is awesome. I can't do that. I can't. I just can't. There is something about Broad. It has to be who you are.
Yeah.
Like, and Dana, he's a very unassuming person. He's a good friend, and I hope he's listening. He's an unassuming guy. He's really nice. He's always prepared. He's just an easygoing person to talk to. And then you hear him get on the mic, and this little red light comes on, and he's just a completely different dude. Yeah. And that's who he is, though.
I love the energy, man.
Yeah.
Well, I love the
Someone
fact
had to bring it.
that Tim Roy gets an opportunity to do some television.
Yeah, I know you do.
I'll leave it there. It was enjoyable to watch that game last night.
I know you do.
For some reason, it wasn't annoying.
888-957-9570 is the number. From the 925 of the Comcast Business Text line. JK could be a good player on a bad team. You said the young looked good last night. Well, TJD, who's in that Dana highlight, has been looking good lately. So JK, only guy who was better last night. Well, look, Trace Jackson Davis has been, to your point, Dana, a player that's played much more like last season than he has. And even quietly, I don't think he's been awesome over the course of this season, but I mean, Podziemski's also been a lot better lately. And I think it's because both of those players have begun to kind of, find their roles on this team. And I think, more so Podziemski than Trace Jackson Davis, but those guys were playing, and Pods was just playing too far out of his comfort zone, was trying to do too much. And someone like Kuminga, meanwhile, I think he's shown that he can now do more things outside of just score the basketball. The offensive rebounding, the steals. I think he had a block last night. He filled up the box score. And now the next step is how they can figure out a way to, I think, empower these young players while winning basketball games, because they haven't done a whole lot of that lately.
I like TJD and what I've seen of him. I like that kid. I like the way he's wired. I love the way he plays. I love bigs like that. And he's just got a really sort of a smooth approach. The dribble handoffs. What I'd like to see him do more of is get to the rim. I know that offense isn't his thing. He certainly can't shoot it, but I think that he can put it on the floor and get to that left hand a little bit more frequently. Because right now it's just tip dunks, it's alley-oops, it's putbacks. I love the way he runs the floor, man. he lumbers, but he's always filling a lane. I love his game. And plus he gives you an interior presence. And he challenges everybody. I think that, was it Filmo was saying that the veterans and Steve Kerr make mistakes? Right on, Filmo. Take your Doobie Award, my man, because you earned it. Because I think Steve Kerr, one of the mistakes that he made in that game on Christmas night, not only was it Jonathan Kuminga who made a mistake, whether people want to admit that or not, but Steve Kerr made a mistake by not having Trace Jackson Davis in that closing lineup.
Yeah, I don't know about that, because like the issue is,
he played so well in that game, and he played well for the last couple of games, and there's no reason for him. You know why he wasn't in it?
Why? It's
because Anthony Davis got hurt, and so Steve Kerr immediately begins to think, let's go small. Let's take advantage of Anthony Davis being out, and let's go small. That's why you had that closing lineup, and you overlooked the fact that that's overcoaching. Like, forget that. Trace Jackson Davis is balling right now. He's going in the game. I don't care about matchups right now. Trace Jackson Davis is going to play for me. And if Trace Jackson Davis is on the floor, Austin Reeves is not getting to the hoop. That's the difference between JK and Trace Jackson Davis and being in school for 5 years. And Trace Jackson Davis is going to challenge that at the rim. I guarantee you that if Trace Jackson Davis was on the floor, I'm not saying take out Jonathan Kuminga, but if Trace Jackson Davis is on the floor, he's not letting anybody go baseline to win that thing, and good night and thanks for coming.
But that's also a situation where you're trusting a younger player, and that burned you. You know, like you could have put Trace Jackson Davis in for Schroeder. You could have put him in for The issue is also, too, they didn't have a timeout. And so, I don't know. To me, I didn't really look at that situation and say that Trace Jackson Davis is the difference. I mean, honestly, if he was healthy because he got hurt in that game, Gary Payton II would have been in that spot, too.
True.
And Gary Payton's a much more heady player right now defensively than Kuminga is. But when you, and this is the other side of the coin, when you do empower younger players, and I agree with most of our callers, and I think we're on the same page, I do want to see specifically Jonathan Kuminga prioritized for this basketball team. You do have to live with the young players' mistakes, and that was one of them. He missed a free throw down the stretch of that game. That's going to hurt you. Even last night, I know he went 11 of 14 at the line, but if that's a closer basketball game, those free throws are going to come back to bite you. And the fact that he has not been north of 70% at the stripe this season, that hurts you. I think the Warriors can play through those and eventually get to a point where they can win, even with some of those mistakes happening. But I think they've been highlighted by a lot of people just because there's been such a small margin for error. And also, people are more inclined, to Philmo's point, basically, to blame younger players as opposed to veterans. I would say one of the dumbest decisions that I've seen from a Warriors player in the last 2 weeks was Curry taking a shot against Houston with 9 on the clock and 13 on the game clock. Like, that was a dumb decision because he was trying to end the game. And the response after the game is, well, I made that shot 100 times. If I make it, we're going to Vegas. And it's like, yes, but you're not. If Kuminga gets his head around and makes that play and helps Wiggins, they win the game and everyone's happy. Or they go to overtime. Maybe they win the game. But it didn't happen. It didn't. And so it's like, I just feel like people are more inclined to point the finger at what they don't know as opposed to the champions that they do. And that's also something that I believe has to change.
Yeah, I would say that when it comes to free throw shooting, I think Steve Kerr would say that there's nothing he can really do about that, especially when it comes to the physical part of a basketball player's offensive game. Like, that's going to come around, or you're either a good free throw shooter or you're not. Missing free throws are sort of beyond Steve Kerr's control. That's up to the player. But when it comes to defensive rotations and mental lapses, that's preventable. And that's what I think drives Steve Kerr nuts. And I think that's really sort of been the disconnect with him and Jonathan Kuminga at the end of the day. It's the little things.
Well, last night he gave you most things.
He was huge last night.
You might have missed some little things, but last night he was awesome. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number. Dan Devone, Evan Giddings with you here on Warriors This Week. Let's go up to Mountain View, talk to Jan. Jan, what's going on? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing okay. Well, I'll start here, and I may get off the track, but I want to make it perfectly clear. When Curry came into this league, he made all sorts of turnovers, and he made mistakes, and so did Clay, and on and on. Well, Mark Jackson developed this team before Kerr took over, and by the time that Kerr took over, the only problem was they couldn't get over the top, but they were playing good basketball. And then Kerr comes in, and he has an easy road for about, and then we get Durant after we had that blowout loss against Cleveland in the finals in 2016, as you remember. And we got Durant. Well, he helped us win 2 more championships. Well, ever since then we got this one in the past 3 years. Well, we've developed a lot of adversity, and it seems like Kerr's. I'm feeling like he's always blaming the rookies or the younger people because they have to learn by their mistakes, just like Curry had to learn. And I know that they want their 5th ring, but look, they're going to have to realize that this is not a championship team. And regardless of who they try to get in to help Curry, it doesn't matter. I don't think they're going to get their 5th ring. They're not going to get they'll be lucky if they make it in the finals this year. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you, Jan. Appreciate the call. Yeah, I don't know if anybody is under the guise that it is or ever was a championship team, Dan, but I think people are just worried that this team is not going to make the playoffs or not even going to. I mean, gosh, you continue to lose the way you have, you might not qualify for the play-in. You might be a lottery team.
I agree.
I mean, they look closer to a lottery team the last 15 games, certainly than a team that is a top 6 seed.
I'm a fan of that at the end of the day. I am. I've
poop for Coop.
I think I've intimated that from the outset. That,
wave the white flag.
You never want to be stuck in the middle. You never want to be middling. Either have the surgery and start the recovery process now, or prolong this and have a slow death.
Just rip the Achilles tendon off the bone.
I just, the idea that you think that this version or a player, whether it's Jimmy Butler, I want to get back to Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kuminga in a second.
Oh.
If you think that that's going to get you back, you're not one player away. This is, and it always has been, a bit of a reset or rebuild. Look at the Buddy Hield, slow-mo, Lindy Waters, Schroeder. These are journeymen. These are guys that you're not winning with, and you're not winning with Steph and Draymond at this age of their careers. So enjoy this. I think if they got to the playoffs and still won, that's all that Steph would require at this point. But this is clearly, I think the best thing that could happen to them is to get into the lottery. You get, I don't, Cooper Flag, I don't even want to go there, but you're starting anew. And the sooner you do that, the quicker you get back to relevancy. The idea of just like trying to balance yourself on both sides of the fence, to me, is a slow death, and it drives me absolutely crazy when teams try and go down that road.
But Austin brought up an earlier point, which is about the marketability. Like, one of the reasons that I believe that the Warriors were so heavy on pushing this idea that Podziemski and Kuminga were bigger than they are. And Podziemski was untradeable or a future all-star. And Kuminga has all the talent in the world. And they're being sold to us as these bill of goods that so far this season they have been able to live up to. I think one of the reasons is there's not really anything to sell with the Warriors outside of Steph Curry. Even Draymond Green, I don't know if that's a selling point for fans. If, let's say, Curry's not playing and Draymond is, I'm not going to the game because Draymond's on the floor. Curry's the only thing that right now this organization has to sell to its fans. And that's the only reason why, if you do decide to tank or to go in the wrong direction, I think you're going to have a hard time keeping happy your most marketable chip, which is Steph. And yes, he hasn't played certainly as well as he even did last year. But if you're the Warriors, I don't think you can afford to try and piss off really the only thing that you got going for you.
I agree. That's why they always say dynasties never end well. There's no easy exit out of this. There's no off-ramp that's going to appease everybody. But I'm just saying that the remedy for this basketball team to get back to where they once were is to start anew sooner rather than later. And if you think that this version of the Golden State Warriors is competitive, you're kidding yourself. At the end of the day, what this is a rebuild. So if you're going to rebuild, lean all the way in. Don't stay in the medium on Highway 101. Pick a lane. So can I give you do you have anyone on any callers?
We got Jonathan who's on his lunch break, so I kind of want to get him in in case he's...
Is it Kuminga?
What's up, Jonathan? I hope we were able to get you in before you finish your lunch. What do you got?
Yeah, you guys did, actually. I just wanted to chime in with what you're kind of saying is a lot of people are saying, if we don't do this, we're not going to the playoffs. If we don't do that, we're not going to the finals. I didn't see playoffs or finals this season with anything we did during the off season. I mean, am I missing something? Am I not part of the fan base? Because a lot of people are talking, as if we're, making a couple moves out of the finals. We have so much work to do. And like you gentlemen said, let's take a page out of Mike Greer and the San Jose Sharks. They were on the cusp for a while and very competitive team, very marketable team. They had a lot of stars on their team. Well, that ended up backfiring as the rebuild started coming, and we watched some horrible seasons of the Sharks. And I got to say, that tank was empty. And it seemed like we were going to give up hope after a while, and then we got it. We had that tank season, which I'm not encouraging anyone to tank. However, we got that number 1 draft pick, and boy, I don't know if you guys are Shark fans, but if you went from last season to this season, even though we're still losing, and you got Macklin Celebrini, seats are filled. People are watching about it. The NHL is talking about the Sharks. Even though we're bad, they're talking about it. And I guess my point to all of this is be patient, Warriors fans. Trust the process. Rebuild's not going to be pretty. It's not fun, but that's what makes you a fan. Sit there, deal with it, and we're going to have a better future once we get that draft pick. That's all I got to say, my guys.
Thanks, Jonathan. Enjoy. I heard it was pesto pizza.
That is correct. It's still good when it's not microwaved.
Right on, Jonathan. Good stuff. All right, Jimmy Butler.
That was a good call.
That was a good call.
We're going to acknowledge pesto pizza. A good call. What do you want with Jimmy Butler?
His name's Jonathan, not Kuminga. But yeah, I mean, look, did people think that they were finals worthy coming into the season? I don't think so. But I think the start had people feeling like the Warriors. Like the Warriors basically gaslighted us. Yeah. I mean, it was. I was sipping the Kool-Aid. I don't know about finals, but I did believe based on the start because again I thought that they had banked enough wins to be able to sustain, an extended stretch of maybe 500 basketball. But again, they're 3-12. They're playing literally the inverse of how they did to begin the season, and they're 30 games in. They still got 52 to go, but they either have to, I don't know, Dan, they have to find a way to win some games if they're going to steer this thing around. But, I mean, to me, it's like, I never bought that they were a championship team, but I think people were buying that they could look like one that was a piece away or a move away. And that's the other thing about the trade market, too, right now. And whether it's for a superstar or for a role player, I just don't think that there's a guy out there that corrects what we've seen right now with the Warriors. I think it runs deeper than that.
No, not at all. And it's not Jimmy Butler. And I think, was it not Austin? It was Raleigh. And Raleigh, North Carolina was talking about it. And he's an impassioned young man. I love that guy. And he was talking about Jimmy Butler or Jonathan Kuminga. Because Jonathan Kuminga, would you agree? Now, Pat Riley has come out and said that Jimmy Butler's not going anywhere.
Do you buy that?
I do.
I kind of don't.
Riley's old school, man.
I know, which is why when his players publicly asking for a trade, his response is not, well, we'll try and figure something out. It's, no, we're not moving him. Like, almost just a spiteful statement towards a guy that has probably been pissing him off for the better part of a
Well, let me ask you
year.
this. So one of the teams that Jimmy Butler has entertained and I think is on his wish list are the Golden State Warriors. Now, if Jimmy Butler were to come to the Golden State Warriors, I think that would really match the timeline with Steph Curry.
Yeah, it would.
Now, Jonathan Kuminga, would you agree, is going to be a trade piece? Like Jonathan Kuminga is like the money has to match up.
He's their best trade chip. Yeah.
So he's going to Miami if that were to happen. Would you agree?
Yes.
Just think about that for a second. And I said this last night. If you think Steve Kerr has issues with Jonathan Kuminga and his lack of defense or the nuances of the game, rest assured that Pat Riley, who has built an entire 4 decades of basketball genius, is built on one thing, and that's buying in and the grit and the dirt and getting on your hands and knees and playing defense. And that's how he wins. That's what he looks for in players. And you better have the dog if you want to come to Miami. And I would just say this, knowing Pat Riley, there's no way in hell that Jonathan Kuminga would ever get traded to the Miami Heat. He is now, is not an indictment on Jonathan Kuminga, so don't go nuts. I'm just telling you, if there was ever a player that was not suitable to play for Pat Riley in the Miami Heat, it's Jonathan Kuminga.
See, I would see that as if Pat Riley wants Kuminga, I don't want to give him up. Like, if Pat Riley, one of the reasons why I feel like the Warriors weren't wise to do business with the Utah Jazz is because Danny Ainge has a long laundry list of trades in which he wins. You're going to get fleeced if you do business with Danny Ainge. If Pat Riley wants one of your players, I'm inclined to keep that player.
Who he doesn't want.
Who?
Pat Riley does not want Jonathan Kuminga.
How do you know that?
Well, I don't. But I'm just saying, historically, when you look at Pat Riley, he's about defense. You know, when you play for the Miami Heat, that you have to, it's like college. You have to like run laps before practice. You have to like go through this training program and come under a certain time just to start camp. It is so old school. It is so much about all the things that Steve Kerr has questions about Jonathan Kuminga. The defensive rotations, the chatter and being communicative defensively, and defense, being a dog. It's the Jimmy Butlers. It's all those guys that have that buy-in to that system. That's Pat Riley. My point is, if there is one player in the NBA that doesn't fit who Pat Riley is, it's Jonathan Kuminga. There's no way in hell I could see Jonathan Kuminga playing for Pat Riley.
See, I actually could, and it's because of all the physical tools. I think Pat Riley is a player that, or is a member of the front office that could say they can't get what they need out of him. I can, because there are far few. There are a fraction of a percentage of players in this league that have the kind of athletic ability of Jonathan Kuminga. I think Pat Riley is looking at him and saying, dude, if I could get my hands on, he's still 22 years old. If I could get my hands on him and I get to get off this problem child that's been pissing me off for the last year.
Yeah, but think about who Jimmy Butler is. Jimmy Butler is a problem child, but there's a reason why he went to Miami's sort of it's for sort of the misfit toys. Jimmy Butler is a talent, but he buys into Miami. And Pat Riley, one of the reasons why he wanted Jimmy Butler is because Jimmy Butler has that dog. Say what you will about Jimmy Butler.
He embodies Heat culture.
Oh, absolutely. And think about all those teams that Spo and Riley have put together. Those aren't about star-laden players. They overachieve. It's about that system, and that system starts with guys like Jimmy Butler and buying in on defense and doing all those things that people have criticized Jonathan Kuminga of not being able to do at this juncture of his career. They're not, I mean, Tyler Hero is a guy that maybe, has some star quality, but every one of those guys are overachievers when you think about how far and as much as Spo and Riley have gotten out of those teams that went to the NBA Finals 2 years ago against Denver, that went to the finals in that pandemic year against, was it the Lakers?
Yeah.
I mean, those teams were void of the Anthony Davises and the LeBron James or the Chet Holmgrens or the Karl Anthony Towns or the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders. It was Pat Riley's system that I don't think suits what it is that we've seen from Jonathan Kuminga up to this point.
Well, and Eric Spoelstra. I mean, I also think, too, that ended up being their downfall, the fact that they did overachieve. But it wasn't like they didn't have talent or an eye for talent. I don't know if Pat Riley wants Kuminga. I'm just not dismissing it. And if he did,
very atypical from what we've seen of Pat Riley teams up to this point. Maybe it happens. I'm just saying it would be sort of unusual.
Well, it also means that the Warriors would have to be in on Jimmy Butler, which at this point, I don't necessarily know why you would do that. I don't see Jimmy Butler as Captain Save a Warriors, and he's just going to come in and bring
an expiring contract.
Well, that would actually, that might be my favorite part about him.
Yeah, but what if he walks and you have to give up Kuminga and Trace Jackson-Davis and draft picks?
Well, then you do get to the point where you're asking for literally a reset. Like that is that is where you reset everything. I'm not sure it's going to happen though. But one more hour left on Warriors this week. If you want to get in on the conversation, please do. 888-957-9570 is the number. That's Dan DeVoe. My name is Evan Giddings. We'll be back after this on 95.7 The Game.
Jackson Davis looking around, gets it to Kuminga. 10 to shoot. Kuminga operating from the left wing, screen from Trace. Kuminga picks up the dribble, throws it away. Stolen by Powell with pause to beat. Euro step, lay, and he missed it! Oh, baby! How did he miss that? Waters to Kuminga, going right at Zoo, lays it up and in! 87-83. The Warriors were down 21 in this game.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Let's go,
KD. The real KD. Golden State's KD.
Right on.
Oh, my gosh. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone with you. 1 hour left here on Warriors This Week, every single Saturday morning. And look, man, it's... You got to try and have some fun with it. I mean, the Warriors ended up losing last night to the Clippers, 102-92. Try to solve this thing, trying to get into some of the big picture stuff that the Warriors can approach. I don't know. Like we left off in the last segment talking about how someone like Kuminga may or may not fit in Miami, but it calls the question of whether or not the Warriors got to make a trade. I do believe that they are trying to make a trade, Dan, but I also think that the Schroeder deal, not that it doesn't dissuade you from doing it, but it opens your eyes to the fact that just because you make a trade doesn't mean it's going to work. And in fact, I would argue since they've got Schroeder in here, it's 5 games, it's a relatively small sample size, but they've looked worse with him than without him.
I would agree with that. So, but what's the grace period? I mean, you come in, you got a new system. You can clearly see that he's pressing a bit.
But you knew that he didn't fit the system.
Well, I think the one we talked about this is that the one thing that he does do is that he can get his shot. And the Warriors are so desperate for those guys. Like they need someone who can create, someone who can ISO and get to the rim. It's Jonathan Kuminga and a little bit of Andrew Wiggins. And so they needed that guy. But I don't know, do we give him how many more games before we're like, okay, come on, man, what's going on here?
Well, he's shooting 28% from the floor and 17% from 3 in 26 minutes. 8 points a game, 4 assists.
How do we officially...
2 turnovers.
I'm calling him Schroeder. I'm hearing Schroeder.
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 Apple strudel.
Yeah. No, he also seems like a cool guy. I think his personality was maybe a bit overblown as a young player. I remember reading something about how he was difficult to play alongside, but I think he's more difficult to have on your team, not because of how he is as a person, but because of how he plays.
Well, the
ball is just so sticky when he's on the floor.
Listen, he got a big deal to leave. I mean, I know the Lakers
turned it down.
In on him. Yeah, turned it down. But he's well-traveled. So there's always something to that. I mean, for a guy who went from Atlanta to, I don't know.
OKC, LA, Boston, Houston, Toronto, Brooklyn, Golden State. I mean...
Hey, what did you think of basketball on Christmas Day?
It was great.
Yeah.
A lot of good games.
God, it's almost like you couldn't script that any better.
They still got pummeled by football.
Oh, my... Netflix destroyed everybody.
Dude, it was like a 3-1 thrashing.
28 million people.
For that crap.
Yeah.
The Baltimore-Houston game was terrible.
Brutal.
And people were still showing up to watch the halftime show.
Wemby might be the MVP this year.
Victor Wembanyama's next up.
Oh, man.
Well, he's already up.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, what's the word you broke out yet? Oh, Gregorian.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn you into the Gregorian chants. That's a real deal thing, man. What was the period before?
I have tried to work on my meditation.
Before the dinosaur area. Was that the Triassic period? So it's the Jurassic area.
Paleozoic?
I think it was, I want to say Triassic.
Okay.
Might be wrong. But that's how I sort of feel right now. Like
watching Wemby?
No, I feel like the NBA right now is like the pre-dinosaur era, the Triassic era. I might be wrong. Before the Jurassic era. And it's like, enjoy this SGA or even Joker. Try and get your MVPs because he's coming. T-Rex is coming.
It's the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Jurassic.
I'm going to look up Triassic. Can you please look up Triassic just so I know?
Early Jurassic, Middle Jurassic, Late Jurassic. I mean,
there's no tri.
But we're just kind of stuck in the middle there. I do think me and Steiny were talking about this. I don't know how you feel about it, but the face of the NBA conversation, I do think you need to be more than just great as a basketball player. You have to have some, I don't know, just a draw or allure. Like Curry's a classic example of that. I don't know if he's ever been the greatest player in the league, like the clear-cut number one, but he's been the face of basketball for a long time. I think that might be the next place the NBA goes, is embracing just a unicorn like Victor Wembanyama as the face of their league, even though he's not from the country that birthed the sport.
Triassic period, defined by the dinosaur lessons in the Triassic. Triassic. Anyways.
Oh, the periods. I thought you were talking about the eras.
Oh, I may have said era.
Well, that's fine.
Anyways, well, yeah, he's not an American. I know that sounds ridiculous, and I don't hug the flag. This isn't about nationalism, but
you're Italian.
There's something to that. That I don't think people gravitate. This, I brought this up to you guys the other day. There's a reason why Caitlin Clark is more popular than any player under the age of 30 in the NBA right now. It's because I think she's from this country, and people have a hard time. That, yeah, it's not about what they do off the court. I mean, Wemby's an interesting guy. It's just, he's from France. Luka's from Serbia. So is the Joker. There's, you need that next, I think, American star that's young that people can really gravitate to. I read this somewhere. I think it was someone said this. It was a guy who was describing Wembanyama to his wife, who's never seen him.
This is on TikTok?
And said between his name, Wemby, and his remarkable skill set, he felt as though he was talking about an imaginary friend. Like there's this guy
didn't seem real.
Yeah, there's this guy named Wemby. He's 7 feet 3 inches tall. He can shoot a three. He can put on the deck and cross over. He can dunk. He can block shots. Isn't it? Yeah. That's scary, man. Well, it's coming. It's coming quicker than we anticipated.
I never had the chance, obviously, to watch someone like Bill Russell, but it does feel like defensively that it's just something that you've never seen before. Like he can guard the 3-point line and the paint at the same time.
Did you see the block he had on Jalen Brunson? And everybody thought it was a goaltend.
Where he just leaped up?
He put it over this. You had to see it to understand. He put it over the standard. Like it didn't swat it into the crowd, but he was late to it, and he knocked it at an angle that I've never seen before. And it was just because it looked so obvious that we've never seen, because he does so many things or like we've never seen that on a basketball floor, that it was obviously had to be a goaltend. And I was like, yeah, it's a goaltend. And then all of a sudden you heard this little murmur on the part of San Antonio, and they replayed it, and it's like, no, he got that thing clean. It's like, how is that possible? He's going to change things, man.
Yeah, he also might get stuck in San Antonio where they can't build around him.
That's why I think if you're San Antonio, you need to win yesterday. Forget about a project with this guy but I don't know. It's sort of like that of Giannis.
I mean, I don't know how they win yesterday. I mean, they got to make a trade, but the Sacramento Kings just fired their head coach yesterday, Mike Brown.
That's ridiculous.
Probably because I don't think there's any coincidence between rumors coming out about De'Aaron Fox being on the trading block. San Antonio was a team that was named, but then they lose miraculously a couple nights later. Mike Brown basically calls out De'Aaron Fox because he was the one that committed the 3-point foul that cost them the game.
Against Detroit of all teams.
Fox, they've actually been playing better, but Fox doesn't take any ownership whatsoever. The next day, Mike Brown gets a text that he's fired. Like, that's not what serious organizations do. No. And so, unfortunately, for a team that is looking to acquire, I think De'Aaron Fox is a good player, even though he's had now 5 head coaches in 8 seasons. I don't think that's all on him. I think some of it's on ownership.
Vivek's a clown.
But he clearly doesn't want to get rid of Fox. And so it's like, I mean, to me, that would have been the best player on the market, bar none.
Oh, yeah.
But, the Sacramento Kings, that's why they were an organization.
Weren't they the darlings of the West?
That hadn't made the playoffs since 2006 or something. But those decisions are why your franchise gets stuck in the mud, is because either you pick the wrong guy, you listen to a player, and the owner has no clue what he's doing. I mean, Mike Brown isn't the perfect head coach. He's not the problems there. No. I mean, the problem was having, and I think the Warriors and Warriors fans might have fallen a little bit into this trap, expecting your team to be better than it actually is. Like the Kings roster, I know they got a bunch of big names. They got Fox, they got Sabonis, now they got DeRozan. Like going out and getting DeRozan didn't make you better. It hurts you. It hurt Keegan Murray. It hurt other defensive-minded players that were the reason the Kings were good in the first place. Same with the Warriors. I think people had too high of an expectation for how much talent was actually on this team. And Mike Brown can't do anything about that. I don't know. I haven't watched all of their games, but Mike Brown ain't the problem there. And I also think for the Warriors to bring in here, I don't subscribe to the fact that Steve Kerr is the problem.
You know what Malone had to say, Mike Malone, the head coach of the Denver Nuggets?
About Mike Brown?
About the firing. Because it happened to him. Malone got canned by the same owner.
Yeah, he was the previous best head coach that they'd had. He was the only guy that could get Boogie Cousins to buy in.
A perfect example of a guy that they gave up on and that they don't know what the hell they're doing. Because Malone, who cut his teeth with the Warriors, and then gets that opportunity in Sacramento, and then obviously blossoms in Denver because I don't know how much better their ownership is. Kind of cheap out there in Denver. But Vivek, firing a guy by a text as he's driving to the airport to get on the team charter. Come on, man.
You're fired? Is that the text? Not even a call? I mean, that's...
I mentioned this. I'd like to get your thoughts.
Worse than breaking up with a girl over text.
You know why the Green Bay Packers, if I'm going to make the football analogy here.
I think I know where you're going.
Did you hear me say this?
No, but based on our conversation, I know you, Dan, I think.
Go ahead. You can beat me to the punch. What am I going to say?
They're owned by the people.
Yeah. I mean, Aaron Rodgers gets an opportunity to sit there under Brett Favre. Same thing with Jordan Love. And you don't have that owner calling down to the coach saying he needs to play. Why is it that those two guys are understudies and it works? It's because you don't have that bozo in the ivory tower. And sometimes it's just, I'd like to see a lot more of that. Teams that are owned by the people.
Isn't that how European football teams are?
Exactly.
I mean, you don't perform, you get canned. Now, there's a lot more, I would say, of a revolving door for the manager in a sport like soccer than the NBA. Gosh, I think it was Chelsea. Chelsea won Champions League not too long ago, like in the last 5 years. And the only reason I remember this is my brother's a fan of the team, so he's kind of telling me what's going on. They canned the manager that won the Champions League. That was the interim because they'd canned the manager during the season. And then the next year after he won Champs League, they canned him. And it's like the guy couldn't last a calendar year and he won the most prolific tournament in all of Europe. I don't know. I thought it was funny.
Well, Mike Brown was the coach of the year less than 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, he got there right after they decided to keep Fox, and they paired Fox with Sabonis, which I think was their original mistake in the first place. Like Tyrese Halliburton, to me, is far more of a winning basketball player than De'Aaron Fox is, especially if he's got some help. But the first domino's fallen. We're officially in trade season. We're officially in head coach firing season. So now Doug Christie, who I love for punching Rick Fox, is now the interim head coach for the Kings.
Yeah, Doug Christie. Pride of Pepperdine.
You don't like him?
No.
Why not?
He's a weird guy, man.
Oh, you actually know the guy.
No, I don't know him. I'm just from what I've read about him.
Oh, gotcha.
He and his wife are sort of different people. Leave it at that.
There's always something with you,
Pepperdine
man.
University, man.
Well, Pepperdine's awesome.
The Wave.
Zzz.
Really?
Plural.
I think it's the Wave.
Pepperdine Waves?
I don't know. You should know.
I do.
You call those games.
God, I've been wrong about a couple of things today.
No, it is. Well, because they're right off of Malibu, so it must be the Waves.
They are the Waves. Yeah, because they play.
That might be the most picturesque university maybe in California. Literally on Malibu.
Which sucks because the students, and I get it.
They're Quakers, right?
It's a private university, and it's up in Malibu. It's in one of the most beautiful places in the world, or especially in the country. But the students that go there are just, I mean, I can't stand them, man. They're just, it's worse than the University of Spoiled Children.
Can't do it.
No, it is. But Pepperdine, the campus is awesome. I would have gone there in a heartbeat.
Really? I think Mass is mandatory every Wednesday. You know what's dangerous?
I went to Mass on Christmas Eve.
So my niece almost went to Pepperdine. She ended up at Notre Dame, but or needs to be. So you know what's really dangerous about Pepperdine? No, I'll leave it alone.
The waves?
No, but there's that highway, the same highway where
Highway
it's
1.
one of the most dangerous highways, but that strip of Highway 1, if you want to get into the city, if you want to go anywhere, you're on that 2-lane highway, which has, I think, one of the highest mortality rates. And so oftentimes you have students who, I think it's a dry campus, I want to say, but we'll make that trek, and there's a lot of fatalities, including students. I want to say there was a couple of students that died last fall. So... And that's the same, Caitlyn Jenner,
Bruce,
known as Bruce, I think was in an accident that involved a fatality on Highway 1 in that same stretch. Maybe Tiger Woods also on that same stretch.
What do you read? I mean, I was seriously, like, where do these things come across? Because I know
honestly, I just make it up.
You're not
who's going to call me out?
Caitlin, get her on the phone.
UC Santa Barbara. That's right.
UC Santa Barbara is fantastic. Isla Vista, though, is one of the most deranged quarter-mile stretches in college communities worldwide. Isla Vista, I don't know, and people that listen to the show, I like to have fun. I don't know if I've ever had more degenerate fun than on IV. That place is a cesspool for college and honestly, some high schoolers that just descend in.
I'm a little too old, but not really. Cinco de Mayo. Have you been there for Cinco de Mayo?
No.
Oh, pasta. I'm telling you, it goes off. Cinco de Mayo in Santa Barbara is just different.
Everything in Santa Barbara is different. That's why it's so far out of the way.
Who was in Montecito? Oh, Jersey Ken was in Montecito.
Is Montecito the small town? Steve, no. Montecito's in SoCal, right?
It's in Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well,
it's where Oprah lives.
How do you know this?
I mean, it's common knowledge, man. Look it up.
You're just making this up.
No, I'm telling you. Jersey Ken was just out there.
Yeah, Montecito in Santa Barbara County, California.
And look where Oprah lives.
No.
Hey, Steve, well, maybe you can get this request in. Can we hear what Mike Malone said about Mike Brown? Mike Malone. You know, I know that he was a little over his skis when he started talking about dynasties when the Denver Nuggets won their first championship, but I got to say, I really like Mike Malone.
Oh, yeah.
He's a good coach.
He really is.
He gets it.
He really does. He always has. I pulled for him in Sacramento. There's certain guys you just liked him here with the Warriors, and you knew he was going to be successful at some point. By the way, someone on the text line, I hope this takes off. When I was talking about talking too much Ibuki. Talking too much Ibuki, actually.
No, we got
it alone.
Come on, man.
I'm just reading from the text line.
I know.
707.
You enjoyed the telecast last night.
Yes, I did.
Because there was a different voice in there than the one that there usually is. And that he's going to be doing tonight. He
is doing tonight?
Well, Timberlake will be back on the radio tonight.
Oh,
so it'll be Fitz and Azubuike on the television side.
Yeah. What is going on here?
Thanks, Fitz. We're trying to figure that out. Trying to keep Dan Devone in his seat. Keep him shackled. Like the way that the Warriors have shackled some of their young players this season.
What do you think of the baseball series? The home and home.
Oh,
well, it's not
like,
even a home
excuse
and
me?
home.
Is there a winter league I'm unaware of? Dominican Summer League, I think it's called. The baseball series, I like it.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, God. I can't stand it.
Because I like baseball. But I don't mind seeing teams play each other back to back. Now, what's weird is I think like Minnesota had a stretch where they played the Trailblazers 3 times in 4 games. That's a little weird.
Yeah.
Either give them the back-to-back. I kind of like the idea of a home and home. Like if the Warriors played back-to-back days, let's say against the Clippers, up there or up at Chase Center and then down at crypto.com or the crypt, whatever. Actually, no, I'm sorry. What is the Clippers Stadium?
Oh, it's
the Intuit Dome. Yeah, I like the idea of that, but having baseball series doesn't really bother me. I don't know. Like, does it not feel like basketball to you?
No, it's just you're so accustomed to seeing a different team and new talent. Seems a little boring.
I mean, I like the idea of you being able to adjust and kind of show whether or not you can make those adjustments night to night. I mean, if it went away forever, I wouldn't be heartbroken. But
I guess more along the lines if I was a ticket holder and I was there in person. Do I want to see the Warriors again? I mean, if I'm
but you might see Steph Curry tonight.
No, that's true.
You know, I think because of load managing, it does give fans a chance to see players play. Like the back-to-back that the Warriors had against the Pelicans at home, Zion only played the first night. So you got to see him there. Second night, it's not the same case.
Speaking of load management, maybe we could talk a little bit more about this, but do you think that along with the three-point shooting is sort of the demise of basketball, as a lot of people seem to be bantering about of late?
I think it's a lot of things. We could talk about that on the other side. I have a few theories. I also have a theory of why load management is the way that the Warriors can also empower their younger players. I think we saw a little bit of it last night, and that might have to be a viable option, not just to keep the Warriors' young players content, keep them developing, but also keep the veterans at the level that they want to be, because I do have a kind of a staggering stat that just hit me like a ton of bricks off, and it didn't even include a player that played last night. It was about Steph, and it was about Draymond. So we'll talk about that on the other side. One more segment here on Warriors This Week. That's Dan DeVoe. My name is Evan Giddings. 888-957-9570 is the number if you want to get on the conversation. We're back after this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He
But
gets
I do
into
like
it,
him.
man.
I do like him on the call. It'll be Tim Roy back on the call tonight for the Warriors. 5:30 tip. Warriors Live, Mark Randy, along with Warriors Wrap-Up here on 95.7 The Game at 4:30.
It will not be Lowe and Dan Devone, that's for sure.
No,
short-lived.
You guys didn't have fun?
Yeah, it's I don't think it's...
It's easy to do with two people.
Yeah, very easy.
You just kick back and forth.
Yeah. Lowe filled it up.
Sorry for throwing
It was
you
Lowe's
under the bus
birthday
there.
yesterday.
What?
Yeah, I know.
What, did you find that out during Warriors
Dan
Live?
Dibley called in.
Really?
Yeah.
What's up, Dibs? I saw him at the Warriors game on Christmas Day. Dude, how can people do that? Like, there should be a way of letting people know that it's your birthday without trying to make it about yourself. Like, I'm another trip around the sun.
Yeah, some people don't want to acknowledge their birthdays.
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, he was...
Well, you still haven't told me your birthday, nor your age.
I would say that it's sort of... He wanted to be sort of on it. I felt kind of bad bringing it up because obviously he's working.
Well, it sounds like Dibs brought it up.
And then he extended the work into 6:30 because of somebody that couldn't be here.
Yeah, I had an obligation. No, my family's on the way down to Los Angeles. I had to see him last night. So I appreciate you guys stepping up and stepping in.
Yeah, no, it was that's a hard show. I'm not good at that. I think you and Granny do a really good job. You guys are really fluid, and
like anything, it takes time. It's the same thing with like play-by-play. You start doing it. You're using different sports broadcasting muscles.
Well, play-by-play, you're calling the action.
Yeah, but that also takes time to figure out because to me, it's just it's like sports. It's all repetitions. Like doing this show over the course of, well, gosh, it seems like almost a year now we've done it together. There's nothing that we haven't really been able to discuss, whether it's Warriors or life or everything in between. I have an idea of what you're going to throw at me, so I don't get flummoxed if you bring up the Buddha, Same thing, I think, with play-by-play. It's like when you see enough situations, you figure out in real time how to describe them. And sometimes you kind of fall into those. Like, that's why you hear broadcasters, I think, say or describe things the same way. That's why guys have catchphrases. It's because that's a muscle that they've trained by watching that situation, describing that situation over a long period of time. Like I heard that doing baseball, the goal in the minor leagues is to do 500 baseball games. So, about 4 seasons worth of the full 140 game slate. The reason is because if you do 500 games, you've probably seen everything that's going to happen in a baseball game.
That's the greatest advice ever. There are no shortcuts. And that's what I really do admire about you in all seriousness. I'm not sucking up, but the fact that you're willing to put in the work at the minor league level or wherever it is that you're doing play-by-play, like that means something because there's no shortcuts. It's almost like being a player. They say you're not ready for the majors until you've had a certain amount of at-bats at the major league level, like 500 to 1,000, till you really understand off-speed pitches at this level of what's going on. And the same with a pitcher. And so there's no real shortcuts, which is why like the Jack Collinsworths of the world, or some people are like, how do I become a play-by-play guy? And we're like, well, listen, you got to go make your mistakes. You got to develop as you go, and you've got to see everything so that when you get to the show, you're not going to be surprised. There's nothing lurking around any corners. You will have been there and done that. And so I appreciate the work ethic, which is not taking any shortcuts.
Well, thank you. And if I can shamelessly plug, later, if you'd like to listen to the St. Mary's West Coast Conference home opener, they play Pacific at 5 o'clock tonight.
The Ping Gales tonight. So you know what?
I'll be on the radio call
by the way, speaking of Lowe, like I really enjoy. This is what I want from here on out.
From Lowe?
Well, Lowe can join me, but I want every time I'm in San Francisco, I want to do that 2 to 6 show. I don't know if that means getting rid of either Willard or Dibs, but I want to do that show. All right, it fits into my schedule, and I enjoy those hours.
So see, that's funny.
Can you tell Nahagian that's my demand?
Yeah, I'll be sure to pass it on. I think that most people don't enjoy the afternoon drive, though, like the host, because I should say if you have a family, right? It's like, maybe it allows you to do things in the morning and at night, but I think it's kind of a tough time because you're getting in at a middle of the day weird hour, but then you're driving home. I don't know, maybe you get in right after the traffic ends. I don't know. Maybe I've worked with some people here, and not named Willard and Dibbs, but that didn't really like the afternoon drive time.
It fits my world perfectly. And plus,
I thought you're a morning guy. I thought you'd like doing the morning shift.
You get everything out of the way by that time. No, you kidding me? I got offered a morning show when I was in television. And
that's right. You did the late night stuff, right?
Yeah, I can't. There was no way in hell I would get up at 3 a.m. for anything, unless, like today, the house is on fire. I'll run outside, but I am not getting up at 3 a.m. to do a show. There's no way. Someone offered me a morning, not radio, but a television show when I was doing television sportscasting, and I told my agent, I'm not doing that.
Well, that's why I have a ton of respect for what Shasky and Bonte do. To have the energy and the opinions and the takes every single morning, that's hard to do, number one. Bonte does Warriors pre and post, so he doesn't even get out of the studio until like 10 o'clock, and then he has to be up at 3. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That to me is tip of the cap to you. It's almost like, that reminds me, it's almost like you have to use the Da Vinci sleep cycle. Have I told you about this?
Oh, yeah. Where you sleep for, this was from, didn't Kramer try this on Seinfeld once?
He might have. I don't remember that episode, but that sounds like something Kramer would do. So in order to basically circumvent your circadian rhythm, Da Vinci, allegedly, would work for 4 hours at a time and then take, I think it was a 40-minute nap, 40 or 30-minute nap, something like that. But as a result, you would only get like 4 hours of sleep throughout the day. And apparently that's just how he always worked. So he worked around the clock. And that's why he did so many great things, evidently.
Those circadian rhythms they're
pretty important.
Well, and they can be really problematic if you're like a flight attendant or a pilot, commercial airline pilot. It's, I think, and to put it into a sort of towards, because I think there's a connective tissue and it's sort of intertwined with your diet. Like, I don't think that, you should be eating at certain hours of the day and not when the sun goes down.
Well, I did just read that apparently my intermittent fasting, and those people that do it, I think Lowe is also someone that intermittently fasts.
How many hours? 16 or 18?
It's usually supposed to be like an 8-hour feeding window or something like that. But anyways, I generally don't eat for the first 4 or 5 hours after I get up. Like, I'm not hungry right now. I'll go have something in a little bit. But apparently it increases your likelihood of, I think it's amnesia.
Mm.
Yeah. So I got to start eating breakfast. But you mentioned something about, pardon me, quick fixes. And look, we got about 20 minutes here left on Warriors this week. 888-957-9570. I don't think there's any quick fix for the league problem that you were teasing before our last break, which was about how you're going to solve the fact that the game, I think the biggest issue with the NBA, if you're going to ask me, is that everything looks the same. It's like a monogamous style of play that isn't really different. And so I think as an average viewer, even as someone who's paid to watch these games, it's like I don't have an incentive to really learn much about players because they all look alike. They're just different shapes and sizes. As far as like the team style of play, everyone seems to kind of do the same thing.
It's really homogenous. Everybody shoots threes basically these days, and they do it in the same sort of fashion, right? And I think changes are imminent. I really do. But here's the other part of this. While the ratings are down, viewership's down, and baseball is suddenly, I think baseball did it the right way. And as much as we were sort of, I don't know, Rob Manfred, I thought was the Antichrist there for a while.
The Golden at Bat?
Well, Rob Manfred, and he got it right. Listen, I don't know about you, but the best thing to me that has happened to baseball in the last 50 years is the pitch clock.
Yes.
And right behind that is eliminating the shift. And those are big, big decisions because you know what they did is they recognized that this is entertainment at the end of the day. And that's what we're selling. And basketball has to recognize that they've got to, I don't know what the change is, but I do think that changes are on the horizon. But here's the other thing, is that do I necessarily really need to make a change? Because, okay, my viewership dollars are down. I just signed a $28 billion new network television deal that they just locked up, literally. I mean, the ink is, isn't even dry on that thing.
But if you're continuing to try and make profit, I mean, one of the reasons why those TV networks want to be involved with the NBA is so that they can sell the spots. But if the NBA is less marketable, or you're getting less viewers than you ever have, maybe not ever, but 48% is the number over the last 10 years in terms of drop of viewership for the NBA. You saw on Christmas Day, they got absolutely dwarfed by the NFL. I don't think the problems are massive to the point where, like they're losing money or the league's in jeopardy by any means. But the product right now just seems kind of stale. I think that's the way that I feel about watching basketball most nights, is that it feels stale. And I don't think, and I believe it's because there's not really, I don't know if it's a face, but just there's not enough unique players. There's not enough characters in the NBA. I don't feel like I know a player that's great that has a personality that I am drawn to. That also happens to play in a big market. I don't think that there's...
Well, that's interesting.
I don't think there's enough big-name players in big-name markets.
Well,
and I don't think because of that there's enough storylines for me to be drawn in.
So I'm curious to get your opinion on this. So I've heard this, that people think that the reason why baseball suddenly turned the corner, and baseball had a huge year last year because their ratings were down, but now they're on the uptick. And the World Series, now granted, it's the Yankees and the Dodgers, but when you think about where they're top heavy, think about where the big name stars are in Major League Baseball. They're all in the big markets.
Yep.
It's New York and it's Los Angeles.
It's not San Francisco?
And it's not San Francisco. Meanwhile, in the NBA, I mean, Ant-Man's in Minnesota, the Joker's in Denver, Giannis is in Milwaukee. And so some people believe that when you're top heavy like that, it's much better for the sport, that you're going to draw those larger audiences, sort of like the Chicago Bulls back in the day where everything was, you would go to see these teams play. And so you would go, even if you're in Cleveland or if you're in a smaller market town, you're going to go when the New York Yankees come to town. And it's a good way to sort of light a fire and have that sort of wealth spread throughout the entire league.
Yeah, I mean, look, the league is, let's just take the All-NBA team from last year. Tatum, he plays in a big market, but he's got the personality of a blank piece of paper. Doncic is European. I also think that his playing style is not aesthetically pleasing to a lot of people, though he's really good. I do love watching Luka Doncic, but he's kind of a base, like a flat-lined player. Like he's going to give you 28, 10, and 10, and it's going to look exactly the same, and there's nothing flashy about it. He's just really good. I think SGA is someone that, to me, has potential, but he plays in Oklahoma City, and I don't know how much he individually has a personality versus bringing the rest of his teammates in when they do all the post-game interviews together. It's like they're a band as opposed to, like, I'm looking for John Lennon, and I'm looking for Paul McCartney. I love the Beatles, but you need those individual characters within the band to be people that make me want to watch you. And, that's why maybe Wembanyama has an opportunity. Like this is stuff that I love. Like I was just reading a story about how Wembanyama, when they were in New York to play the Knicks on Christmas, spent time at Washington Square Park playing chess against speed chess players. Like that kind of stuff I like. Him being out in public, the fact that he's 7'4" and everyone knows who he is. And it's like those are the kinds of things that, and maybe it's because he plays in Minnesota. I don't know if I read much about Ant-Man. Zion Williamson, to an extent, who's a great talent. He's in New Orleans. John Morant's in Memphis. And obviously the suspensions from the last season have kind of marred, I think, his popularity. But to me, the most obvious answer that checks all the big market boxes and talent and championships and accolades, it's Jason Tatum. But I don't think he will ever be someone to carry the league.
Jason Tatum, by the way, doesn't get enough respect. Yeah, I get the personality thing. But you know how durable this guy is? He's like he's like the Cal Ripken of the NBA. He never misses a game. In this era of load management, does not apply to Jason Tatum. So hats off, man.
No, I mean, I know people don't really like him, although that's funny because I don't understand why. Maybe it's because he is boring. Maybe it's because he kind of falsely adopted the Kobe thing. Maybe it's because he's on a really good team, but people don't think he's the best player, which was kind of something that happened to Steph a little bit early in his career.
Yeah, you know what's funny, though, Ev, is that this predates you, but I think some of this is sort of like we love to be a little bit salacious and like, oh, this is the end of the popularity that is the NBA. I heard this exact same thing. I think I was telling you and Steiny this. Back in the day when it was Michael Jordan and guys dunking a basketball, I remember the emblem, the Nike emblem. It was all about can you fly? And everybody in college was about the dunk, the 360 dunks. It was the Dominique Wilkins of the world. When the dunk contest used to be something. And I distinctly remember people were saying, that's the end of basketball. You guys in college don't even know how to shoot a jump shot anymore. And you can't even shoot free throws. And it was like, it's the end of the fundamentals of basketball, which is why Hoosiers, when it came out, was so popular. Everybody was enamored with the dunk shot, and this was supposed to be the end of the sport. And you look at where we're at right now, where it's all about everybody shooting. I actually like the game. I think that we have to find that sort of balance in between shooting it too much. And there's some ideas that, I think that you need to do away with the 3-second violation.
That might help. Where I do think that basketball is similar to baseball is, number one, it's moving towards being more of a local or regional sport. And I think the national draw is not as large. But I also think that in baseball, it's all about, for offense, like the 3 true outcomes: walk, home run, strikeout. I think it's kind of similar for basketball. Let's take the 3 true outcomes for the 3-point shot, a layup, or a dunk, and the free throw. It's like, that's all people are trying to get. But they're trying to get the most efficient version of all 3 of those shots. If you shoot 40%, it's as good as shooting 60% from 2. Like, there's all these, math is so integrated into all these sports now. And I don't want to say it's bad for the game because we've never seen players score at this level, at this rate, at this pace. The game is faster than it's ever been. It's played more to the perimeter than it's ever been. But that also means that I think it is taking somewhat of an adjustment for our eyes to be like, God, like, what is really different about this team? What makes Orlando that much different than Miami? Or what makes the style of Dallas different than Houston? Even the Warriors, I mean, they told you this summer that they were going to try and shoot 53s a game, that they wanted to look more like OKC or Boston.
Look like everybody else has.
Exactly. It's a copycat league. And I don't know and maybe that's why people also don't like Tatum, because they feel like his team has like, I feel like they play like the 2018 Rockets a little bit. Maybe they just have more talent on that team, but the Boston Celtics are just better than every single team they play. And they know that if they get up enough threes and they make enough, that there's no way that they're not going to win a basketball game. It's almost an equation that they've solved. And that's what I think the game feels like, as people are trying to solve equations, and it's less about actual play and style and expression and emotion. All things that might not be quantifiable, but I think for the average viewer are interesting and intriguing.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. Although you could say that like the last 3 NBA champions were sort of did it a different way. I know they all shot threes, but not Denver, really. I think Jokic is sort of one of one. Boston shot a lot of threes. Giannis, in the way Milwaukee played, is a little dissimilar than everybody else. I think that there's going to be a tipping point where you've got Anthony Edwards is like, he's shooting so many threes now. That guy going to the rim is one of the most exciting things in basketball. At least it was. John Morant.
Imagine if Michael Jordan could dunk the way that he dunked, but instead took 13 threes a game.
Which he would have. I mean, because it's the high percentage shot. But just think about this. John Morant was sort of tongue-in-cheek, but he's like, I'm not dunking the basketball anymore. I'm going to shoot threes. Like, that's how I That's how you make your money now. It's how you pad your stats. And so what's lost in the game is sort of what it is that Michael Jordan and that emblem of him flying through the air. Now it's the complete. I remember when I was, balling back in the day, it's like the NBA game was really not even relatable to guys like me because I couldn't dunk. I couldn't get the rim. It's like I'm shooting. I'm driving to the hoop. I'm like a shooter, man. I'm not 6'5". And now that the game's become so relatable to the smaller basketball player that we went feast or famine on this. And so I think that you got to bring back the mid-range and that interior play. And I think one of the first starts is to get rid of three. They do that in the FIBA League. They do that internationally.
The restricted area? Or
and also referees.
The 3-second rule.
Yeah, the 3-second rules. And I would, the restricted area, you can make that, get that a little bit wider.
Yeah.
The circle wider. Also, referees, eat your damn whistle, man. Stop ruining what is supposed to be the best athletes in the game. Stop ruining the fluidity of this sport. Like, to me, that's an easy fix.
I'm with you. I think there's nothing more boring than just watching teams take free throws. And it's the strategy and it's the strength of some teams, but you're right. When there's so many whistles, it ruins the best part of basketball, which is the flow.
Yeah,
basketball is the one sport that doesn't stop outside of soccer, but obviously that's more of an international sport. But, it's like, I think that's why I and a lot of people, when we do, it's like hockey is fun because it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Basketball, that's what makes it fun. Football, you're pausing every 15 seconds. Maybe there's a replay involved in, but relatively speaking, doesn't go. Baseball's turn-based, but there's a lot of stoppages. There shouldn't be stoppages in basketball. Let the boys play. I also think
in FIBA, they also let them play.
Yeah, they do. But yeah, it's a much more physical game, and I think people, I don't know if they've tried to take it out of the league, but I think they're starting to come back to and around a little bit. Like, I think actually, like the Houston Rockets are an example of a team that they take advantage of swallowed whistles. Like, they're a physical, defensive-minded basketball team. They can't score for crap. Really the biggest issue, though, I don't think it's, because you brought up a good point. Like, champions have looked different in recent years. I don't know if parity is necessarily something that bothers me, but I do think that they're trying to solve the regular season. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's the playoffs, there's going to be a draw. I mean, shoot, the World Series was a massive boost this year because it was the Yankees and the Dodgers. Like, people will watch meaningful games. That's the problem, though. The regular season doesn't feel like there's enough meaningful games. And this, the NBA Cup crap and all these kind of built-in gimmicks.
You guys shorten the season, first of all.
Well, they're never going to do that, though. I mean, I think that's why the NFL is so dominant. It's because every game is meaningful. It's not the case in basketball. Especially like last night. It's like, it's meaningful to Warriors fans to see Kuminga go for 34, but Steph and Draymond are playing. I was talking to some buddies. They're like, oh, we're getting 30 burgered or 20 burgered. I'm watching that. The game's not meaningful. I don't know. Anyways, that's a pretty good show, Dan.
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh, well, the Warriors got another crack to move above 500. They could also fall below 500 if they lose tonight. It would be their 13th in 16 games when they face the Phoenix Suns at 5:30. Mark Graney's got Warriors wrap-up along with Warriors Live for you beginning at 4:30 before Tim Roy back on the radio side will have the play-by-play call at 5:30. So, for Steven Risotto, our great producer behind the glass, for Dan Devone, my name is Evan Giddings saying so long. You've been listening to this edition of Warriors This Week. We'll talk to you next time on 95.7 The Game.